It begins with a sound, not from the world outside, but from the small, glowing rectangle on the nightstand, a digital chime, precision engineered to pierce through the layers of sleep. Before the eyes have fully adjusted to the dim light of morning, the hand has already found its target. The thumb swipes and the portal opens. A flood of information rushes in. Emails from the boss, sent late last night, already outlining the day's emergencies. News headlines announcing another global crisis, another market fluctuation. Notifications from social media, showcasing the curated highlights of other people's lives, their triumphs, their travels, their seemingly effortless joy. The mind, still heavy with dreams, is instantly pulled into a state of high alert. The heart rate quickens, just slightly. A mental checklist begins to form, a cascading list of tasks, worries, and obligations. The coffee machine gurgles, its sound a familiar but hollow comfort. The first sip is hot, a jolt to the system, but it doesn't touch the deeper exhaustion. This is the ritual of the modern morning, a ceremony of immediate and relentless engagement. We call this being connected, being informed, being productive. But if we were to pause, just for a moment, and truly feel what is happening within our own bodies, our own minds, we might call it something else. We might call it a kind of low-grade fever of the soul, a silent hum of anxiety that has become the background music to our lives. This feeling of being perpetually overwhelmed, of running but never arriving, is not a personal failure. It is a symptom of our time, a condition of living in a world that never sleeps, a world that constantly tells us we are not enough, that we need more, that happiness is just one more achievement, one more purchase, one more notification away. We are running on a treadmill crafted from consumerism and comparison, chasing a horizon that recedes with every step we take. And in the breathless rush, we have become profoundly disconnected from the one person who is with us every moment of every day, ourselves. But what if there is another way, a path that does not require us to renounce the world, but invites us to experience it differently? What if peace is not something to be found in a distant future, after all the boxes are checked, but is available to us right now, in the midst of our chaotic lives? There exists an ancient wisdom, a practical science of the mind that offers not an escape, but a way to come home. It teaches an art form that has become almost entirely forgotten in our noisy world. It is the art of stillness. This is not an empty, dead silence. It is a stillness that is alive, vibrant, and deeply aware. It is a quiet space where we can finally hear our own wisdom, heal our own wounds, and touch the unshakable peace that lies dormant, waiting beneath the turbulent surface of our thoughts. This is an invitation to learn that art, to begin a journey through 20 profound steps that act as keys, unlocking the door to a calmer, clearer, and more meaningful life. We begin our journey not with a comforting platitude or a simple promise of happiness, but with an act of profound courage. It is the courage to look directly, without flinching, at the fundamental nature of our own experience. In the ancient language of the Buddha, this first step is called understanding dukkha. The common translation for dukkha is suffering, and this single word is perhaps the greatest barrier for the modern seeker. It sounds pessimistic, morbid, even nihilistic. Our culture is one of relentless optimism, of aspiring to perpetual happiness, of curating our lives to show only the brightest moments. We are taught that suffering is a problem to be fixed, an anomaly to be medicated, an inconvenience to be distracted from. We are told to think positive, to look on the bright side, to never let them see us sweat. So, to begin a path to inner peace with an examination of suffering seems counterintuitive. even wrong, but this is based on a profound misunderstanding of what dukkha truly means. To grasp its essence is not to become a pessimist, but to become a realist. And in that realism, we find the first taste of true freedom. Imagine you have been feeling unwell for months, a subtle but persistent fatigue, a sense of unease that you can't quite name. You finally go to a physician, the physician who says, "Oh, it's nothing. Just think happy thoughts," offers a moment of hollow relief, but no cure. The physician who runs tests, who sits down with you and gives a clear, precise diagnosis, may deliver news that is difficult to hear. But in that moment, in naming the ailment, the entire path to healing opens up. The uncertainty is gone. The path forward, however difficult, is now clear. Acknowledging dukkha is this diagnosis. It is the brave and compassionate act of looking at the human condition and saying, yes, there is a fundamental dis-ease here. There is a friction. There is an ache. And by doing so, we stop running. We stop pretending. And we can finally begin the work of healing. So what is dukkha, if not just pain and misery? The word itself offers a clue. In ancient Sanskrit, ka meant the axle hole of a wheel, and du was a prefix meaning bad or ill-fitting. Dukkha, then, evokes the image of a wheel that is not properly centered on its axle. As it turns, there is a constant wobble, a subtle but persistent bumpiness, a friction. The ride is never entirely smooth. This is a much better metaphor for our lives. Even when things are good, even on a beautiful day when we have everything we think we want, there is often a subtle, underlying sense of incompleteness, of waiting for the other shoe to drop. This is dukkha. It is the pervasive sense of unsatisfactoriness that colors our existence. To understand it more deeply, this wisdom tradition breaks it down into 3 distinct types. The first is the one we all know, dukkha dukkha, the suffering of suffering. This is the obvious, undeniable pain of life. It is the headache that throbs behind your eyes. It is the grief that hollows out your chest when you lose a loved one. It is the anxiety of losing a job, the sting of betrayal, the slow decay of old age, the fear of sickness. This is the raw, unavoidable pain that is part of being a biological creature in a fragile body. No amount of positive thinking can wish away a broken bone or the sorrow of a final goodbye. This form of dukkha needs little explanation, because we have all felt it. It is the sharp, acute reminder of our vulnerability. The second type is more subtle and perhaps more pervasive in our modern, affluent world. It is called viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This is the stress and anxiety that comes from the fact that pleasant experiences do not last. It is the perfect vacation, tinged with the sadness of knowing it has to end. It is the joy of a new car, which inevitably fades into the mundane reality of a commuting vehicle. It is the bittersweet ache of watching your children grow up, knowing that the sweet moments of their childhood are fleeting and can never be recaptured. It is the desperate scrambling to hold on to youth, to health, to a moment of success. We expend enormous energy trying to freeze-frame happiness, to build walls around our pleasant experiences. But life, by its very nature, is a river. It flows, and our resistance to this flow, our clinging to the pleasant moments, and our desperate attempts to make them permanent, is itself a source of profound, chronic stress. This is the dukkha of impermanence. The happiness we chase is like a butterfly that lands on our hand. The moment we try to close our fingers around it to possess it, we crush it. The suffering comes not from the butterfly leaving, but from our attempt to grasp what was never meant to be held. The third, and most profound type is sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence. This is the deepest and most subtle form of dukkha. It is the background hum of anxiety that is woven into the very fabric of having a self, an ego. It is the baseline unsatisfactoriness of being a conditioned, dependent, and impermanent being. Even when there is no obvious pain, and even when we are not clinging to a pleasant experience that is ending, there can still be a feeling that something is not quite right. It is the existential friction of being me. It is the subtle effort required to maintain our identity, to defend our opinions, to manage our reputation, to worry about our future, and to process our past. It is the vulnerability of knowing that everything we are, everything we identify with, is a temporary collection of thoughts, feelings, and physical processes, all dependent on causes and conditions outside of our control. This is the dukkha that is present even in moments of apparent peace. It is the faint tremor of instability beneath the floorboards of our entire life. It is the deep, unspoken question, is this all there is? There is a famous story that illustrates the first, brave step of acknowledging dukkha with beautiful compassion. A young woman named Kisa Gotami lived in a village and had a single infant son, whom she adored more than life itself. One day, the child fell ill and died. Consumed by a grief so powerful it bordered on madness, she refused to accept his death. She clutched the tiny, lifeless body to her chest and went from house to house, begging for medicine that could revive her son. Some people mocked her, others turned away in pity, but no one could help. Finally, a wise man saw her desperation and, instead of dismissing her, offered a sliver of hope. He told her to go and find a single mustard seed from a house where no one had ever lost a child, a spouse, a parent, or a friend. Filled with a desperate hope, Kisa Gotami began her search. She went to the first house, and when she asked for the mustard seed, the family was happy to give it. But when she asked the crucial question, "Has anyone in this house ever died?" the woman of the house replied, "I have lost my husband." Kisa Gotami moved to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was the same everywhere. "Our youngest son died last year. My parents are long gone. The living are few, but the dead are many." She went through the entire village and did not find a single home untouched by death. As the sun began to set, the reality of her search washed over her. The deep, personal, isolating agony of her own grief began to transform. She realized that her sorrow was not hers alone. It was the shared, universal sorrow of all humanity. In that moment of profound realization, her clinging to her personal tragedy softened. She understood the universal truth of loss. She went to the forest, laid her son's body gently down, and accepted the first noble truth. Her healing did not begin when she found a magical cure, but when she fully and completely accepted the reality of her situation. To look at dukkha is not to surrender to it. It is to understand it. By bravely naming this fundamental unsatisfactoriness, we stop wasting our energy on the futile project of denying reality. We stop blaming ourselves for feeling incomplete, and we stop chasing external solutions for an internal condition. Acknowledging dukkha is an act of supreme kindness to oneself. It is permission to be human. It gives us a solid ground to stand on, a starting point from which the entire journey can unfold. It is not the end of the story. It is the first sentence of the first chapter in the Book of Liberation. It is the diagnosis that makes a cure possible. And so, we have taken this first, most courageous step. We have stood still long enough to feel the wobble of the wheel, the friction of the ride. We have named the dis-ease. Now, With clear eyes and a steady heart, we can begin to investigate its nature more deeply. We can ask the most important question that follows any diagnosis. Where does it come from? What is its cause? This is the next step on our path. In our last step, we took the courageous look into the heart of the human condition. We named the fundamental dis-ease, the subtle but pervasive unsatisfactoriness of life, giving it its proper name, dukkha. To name an illness is the first step toward healing. Now, we move from the what to the why. We become detectives of the mind, following the threads of our own experience back to their source. If our lives are marked by this constant, low-grade friction, this feeling of being a wheel slightly off-center, then what, precisely, is causing the wobble? The second great truth offered by this ancient wisdom is perhaps the most revolutionary, the most empowering, and the most personal. It states that the root of our suffering is not found in the world outside of us. It is not our boss, our partner, our financial situation, or the state of the world. The primary cause of our discontent is found within. It is an internal mechanism, a deep and relentless thirst, known in the Pali language as tanha. Tanha is often translated as desire or craving, but like dukkha, these English words fail to capture its full depth. Tanha is not the wholesome wish for our children to be happy, nor is it the noble aspiration to become a better person. Tanha is a thirst. Think of the desperation of a person lost in the desert. It is a primal, compulsive, and often unconscious drive that dictates our actions, colors our perceptions, and fuels our anxieties. It is the frantic, needy energy that whispers in the back of our minds, the perpetual state of if only I had that promotion, then I would be secure. If only I could find the perfect partner, then I would feel whole. If only I could get rid of this anxiety, then I could finally have peace. This, if only, is the signature of tanha. It places our happiness forever, in the future, conditional, upon a world that is constantly changing and beyond our ultimate control. There is a powerful and ancient metaphor that perfectly illustrates the self-defeating nature of this thirst. Imagine you are adrift on the ocean, dying of thirst under a burning sun. All around you is water, endless and vast. In your desperation, you cup your hands, scoop up the ocean water, and drink it down. For a fleeting moment, there is the cool sensation of liquid, a brief illusion of relief. But within moments, the salt begins to burn your throat. It leaches the moisture from your cells, and the thirst returns with a ferocity that is even more intense than before. Driven by this new, more powerful thirst, you drink again, and the cycle repeats, each drink deepening your dehydration, leading you faster toward your demise. This is the very mechanism of tanha. We attempt to quench our inner thirst for happiness and peace with the salt water of worldly pleasures, achievements, and distractions. Each sip provides a moment of relief, but ultimately leaves us thirstier than before, trapped in a cycle of wanting, getting, and wanting again. To understand this mechanism more clearly, we can look at the three distinct faces, or types, of tanha. The first is the most familiar, the most obvious. It is kama tanha, the thirst for sense pleasures. This is the relentless craving for experiences that are pleasing to our six senses. A beautiful sight, a captivating song, a delicious taste, a pleasant smell, a comforting touch, or even a pleasant thought or fantasy. In our modern world, this is the engine of consumerism and digital distraction. It is the unconscious scrolling through social media feeds, our brains seeking the next little hit of dopamine from a novel image or a red notification heart. It is the desire for the next new phone, the next fashionable piece of clothing, the next episode in a series we are binge-watching. It is the craving for the comfort of junk food, the buzz of alcohol, the escape of a video game. We are not bad for wanting these things, but the wisdom here is to see the pattern clearly. The pleasure is always temporary. The satisfaction is always fleeting. The new phone becomes old. The taste of the meal fades. The show ends. And when the pleasure subsides, an empty space remains. A void that the thirst immediately wants to fill with something new. This is what turns us into hungry ghosts, perpetually seeking, but never truly finding lasting satisfaction. The second face of our thirst is more psychological, more subtle, and deeply woven into our modern cult of self-improvement and success. It is bhavatanha, the thirst for existence, or the thirst to become. This is not just the basic will to live. It is the deep, anxious drive to become something more, something better, something permanent. It is the craving to solidify our identity, to carve out a lasting place in the world. It is the relentless ambition to become a successful CEO, a respected professional, a famous artist, a perfect parent, or even, in a spiritual context, an enlightened person. It is the engine behind the thought, when I finally achieve X, I will be worthy. When I get that degree, lose those 10 pounds, buy that house, or perfect my meditation practice, then my life will truly begin. This form of tanha is rooted in a fundamental feeling of inadequacy, a sense that who we are, right here and now, is not enough. It creates a perpetual striving toward a future, idealized version of ourselves, a projection that can never be reached, because once we reach one goal, the thirst to become simply creates a new one. This is the source of so much of our stress and burnout, this constant, exhausting project of becoming, which prevents us from ever simply, peacefully being. The third face is the shadow of the first two. It is vibhavatana, the thirst for non-existence, or annihilation. If craving is the pulling toward, this is the violent pushing away. This is aversion, hatred, and denial. It is the desperate desire to get rid of an unpleasant experience. When a feeling of anxiety, sadness, or boredom arises, vibhavatanya is the immediate, visceral reaction. I can't stand this. I have to make it stop. It's this thirst for annihilation that makes us reach for our phones to escape a moment of boredom, that makes us lash out in anger to destroy a perceived threat to our ego, that makes us numb ourselves with distractions to avoid feeling our own pain. It is the desire to annihilate a difficult situation, to end a challenging relationship, or to quit a job, not from a place of wisdom, but from a place of pure aversion. This get it away from me energy is just as much a form of thirst as the give it to me energy of craving. It is a refusal to be with reality as it is. It is a declaration of war on our own present moment experience. And a war against oneself is one you can never, ever win. It only creates more conflict, more tension, and more suffering. These three thirsts for pleasure, for becoming, and for annihilation are not separate forces. They are the three heads of a single beast, and they feed a vicious, self-perpetuating cycle that happens in a flash, often completely unconsciously. A feeling arises, triggered by something we see, hear, or think. If the feeling is pleasant, the thirst to hold on to it, to possess and repeat it, kicks in. If the feeling is unpleasant, the thirst to destroy it, to push it away, kicks in. This initial reaction of thirst then solidifies into something stronger, upadana, which means clinging or attachment. We cling to our desires and we cling to our aversions. This clinging is the fuel that powers the wheel of dukkha, that keeps it spinning day after day, year after year, trapping us in predictable patterns of reaction. To see this, to truly see this internal mechanism in action, is the second noble truth, and it is the best news we could ever receive. Why? Because if our suffering were caused by the world, we would be helpless victims, forever at the mercy of circumstance. We would have to control the entire world to be happy. But it is not. The source of the disease is not out there. The source is in here. It is this internal, conditioned pattern of thirst and clinging. And if the cause is internal, then the solution must be internal as well. The power to change is not outside of us. It is, and always has been, within our own minds. We have now followed the thread back to its source. We have identified the culprit. We have seen how this deep, burning thirst for reality to be other than it is becomes the architect of our own inner prison. So, the path forward becomes clear. If the cause of our suffering is this compulsive, tight-fisted grasping, then the path to our freedom must lie in its exact opposite. It must lie in the gentle, courageous, and profoundly liberating act of learning to unclench that fist. It must lie in the art of letting go. We have stood face to face with the nature of our disease, dukkha. We have peered into its source and found the relentless, burning thirst of craving and aversion, tanha, to be the root cause. A diagnosis has been made, and the cause has been identified. This is a moment of profound hope, because the logic that follows is inescapable and liberating. If the root of suffering is a tight, desperate grasping, then the path to freedom must be found in the art of release. It must be found in the gentle, courageous, and continuous practice of letting go. This simple phrase, "let go," is perhaps one of the most misunderstood in our modern lexicon. In a culture that prizes tenacity, control, and relentless pursuit, letting go is often equated with failure, with weakness, with apathy, or with giving up. We are told to hold on, to never quit, to fight for what we want. The idea of release feels like a betrayal of our ambition, a surrender. We imagine it as a state of passive indifference, a cold detachment from the world. But this is a caricature. In the context of inner wisdom, letting go is the furthest thing from weakness. It is an act of supreme strength and profound intelligence. It is not about not caring. It is about caring enough about our own well-being to release the very things that cause us pain. Imagine you are holding a burning piece of coal in your hand. It sears your flesh, causing you intense agony. The act of opening your hand and dropping the coal is not an act of weakness. It is an act of sanity. It requires no complex philosophy, only the clear recognition that holding on is causing you harm. Our resentments, our regrets, our anxieties about the future, our rigid ideas about who we are, these are the burning coals we clutch in the fist of our minds, wondering why we are in so much pain. Letting go is simply the wise and compassionate act of unclenching that fist. It is not a single event, but a moment-to-moment art form, a skill to be cultivated with patience and kindness. It is the art of unburdening the heart. To learn this art, we must first look at the heavy burdens we carry, often without even realizing it. The first, and perhaps heaviest, is the ghost of the past. Our past lives within us, not as a simple record of events, but as a living, breathing entity. For many of us, it is a landscape haunted by the ghosts of regret. The mind becomes a courtroom where we are perpetually on trial for past mistakes. We replay conversations, cringing at what we said or failed to say. We relive moments of failure, second-guessing our decisions, torturing ourselves with an endless stream of what-ifs and if-onlys. What if I had taken that other job? If only I hadn't ended that relationship. This internal monologue is a form of self-inflicted violence. It keeps us anchored to a reality that no longer exists, draining our vitality and attention away from the only time we can actually live, the present. Letting go of regret does not mean pretending a mistake didn't happen. It means accepting that it happened, that it is over, and that the only thing we have control over now is the choice to stop punishing ourselves for it. It is the recognition that the past is a place of reference, not a place of residence. But the prison of the past is not only built from bricks of regret, it is also fortified with bars of gold. We can become just as trapped by our past glories as by our past failures. When we cling to a past success, a great achievement at work, a time when we were in peak physical shape, a golden era in a relationship, we create a static museum of the self. We identify so strongly with that past version of me that we become rigid, fearful of taking risks that might tarnish that legacy. We compare every present experience to that golden past and find it lacking, which is a recipe for constant dissatisfaction. The person who constantly talks about their past triumphs is as much a prisoner as the person who constantly laments their past failures. Both are living in a shadow world. Letting go of past glories means allowing ourselves to be who we are now, a dynamic, evolving being, not a static monument to a former self. It means having the humility to be a beginner again, every single day. The practice of releasing the past, whether it is one of regret or of glory, begins with mindful acknowledgement. It means when a memory arises, instead of either getting lost in its story or immediately trying to push it away, we simply note its presence. Ah, there is that memory of the argument. Or, there is the memory of that success. We see it, we acknowledge it, we let it be there without feeding it the fuel of our obsessive attention. The second step is the radical act of forgiveness. Forgiveness, especially of ourselves, is often the key that unlocks the prison door. It is not about condoning a harmful action. It is about making a conscious choice to release the toxic poison of resentment from our own system. Holding a grudge is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. Forgiveness is the antidote we administer to ourselves. The great Thai meditation master Ajahn Chah would sometimes illustrate this with a simple teaching. He would tell a student to pick up a large, heavy stone. After the student had been holding it for some time, he would ask, "Is it heavy?" The student would invariably reply, "Yes, very heavy." Ajahn Chah would then look at them with kindness and say, "Then put it down. Our past is this stone. The choice to continue carrying it or to gently set it down is ours in every moment. If the past is a heavy stone we drag behind us, the future is a shimmering, deceptive mirage that we constantly run toward." The second great burden we must learn to let go of is our obsessive and anxious grip on what is to come. Anxiety, in its essence, is the experience of suffering in advance. We live through tragedies that have not yet occurred. We play out catastrophic scenarios in our minds: losing our job, getting sick, being rejected, and our bodies react as if they are happening right now. Our heart races, our palms sweat, our stomach churns. We are suffering from a fantasy. We are drinking poison from a cup that doesn't even exist yet. Letting go of the future means recognizing the difference between wise planning and neurotic worrying. Planning is a practical, present moment activity. We can sit down and make a budget, schedule a doctor's appointment, or outline a project. This is skillful. Worrying, on the other hand, is a destructive mental habit. It is the repetitive, cyclical churning of negative possibilities without any movement toward a solution. It is like spinning the wheels of a car stuck in the mud. It only digs us deeper. Even more subtly, we must learn to let go of our attachment to our hopes and expectations. This sounds paradoxical. Isn't hope a good thing? A wholesome aspiration to create a better life is skillful. But when hope hardens into a rigid expectation, it becomes a blueprint for suffering. We create a detailed mental movie of how things should be, how our vacation should unfold, how our children should behave, how our career should progress. We then project this movie onto the screen of reality. When the messy, unpredictable, and often beautiful reality of life doesn't match our script, we suffer. We feel anger, disappointment, and a sense of betrayal, not by life itself, but by the failure of life to conform to our private fantasy. Letting go of expectations does not mean abandoning our goals. It means holding our goals lightly. It means falling in love with the process, not just the outcome. There is a wise parable of a farmer. The farmer can do everything in his power to ensure a good harvest. He can prepare the soil, choose the best seeds, plant them at the right time, and water them diligently. But he cannot control the sun. He cannot control the rain. He cannot control a sudden blight or an infestation of pests. The wise farmer does his part with great care, and then he lets go. He trusts the process. He accepts that the ultimate outcome is not entirely in his hands. This is the balance of wise effort and wise surrender. This is letting go of the future. We have looked at the past and the future. Now we must turn to the most intimate and challenging object of our attachment, our own self. The deepest and most liberating form of letting go is the release of our rigid, fixed identity. Each of us carries a story of who we are, a narrative we have been writing since childhood. I am a successful person. I am a victim. I am an anxious person. I am intelligent. I am not good enough. This story, this collection of labels and concepts, becomes a heavy costume that we wear day in and day out. We spend enormous energy defending this story, seeking evidence to confirm it, and feeling threatened when anything contradicts it. Letting go of the self does not mean we cease to exist. It means we let go of the rigid, limiting story of the self. We see it for what it is, a mental construction, not a solid, unchanging entity. One of the ego's most cherished attachments is the need to be right. Think of the immense amount of energy we expend in arguments, both internal and external, trying to prove our point, to defend our position. This need to be right is a fortress of the ego. Letting go in this context is the willingness to value peace over being right, to value connection over winning. It is the humility to listen to another's perspective without immediately formulating a rebuttal. Another core practice is letting go of the inner judge. We all have an inner critic that provides a running commentary on our lives, constantly evaluating, comparing, and finding fault. We often mistake this voice for the truth. The practice of letting go is to learn to observe this voice as just another mental event, like a passing cloud. We hear the judgment, "You're not doing this right," and instead of believing it or fighting it, we can simply note, there is the voice of judgment. By not grasping it, we rob it of its power. There is no story that illustrates this unburdening process more perfectly than that of the two monks. Two Zen monks were on a pilgrimage, and they came to a river where the bridge had been washed away. A beautiful young woman in a fine silk kimono stood there, distressed, unable to cross without ruining her clothes. The younger monk, adhering strictly to the monastic vows that forbade him from touching a woman, looked away. The elder monk, however, simply smiled, walked over to the woman, lifted her up in his arms, carried her across the churning river, and set her down gently on the other side. She bowed in gratitude, and he bowed back. The two monks then continued their journey. Hours passed in silence. The younger monk grew more and more agitated. His mind was a storm of judgment. How could he do that? He broke his vows. It was improper. What will people think? The thoughts churned and churned, building a heavy pressure inside him. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, he burst out, "Brother, I cannot believe what you did back there. We are not supposed to touch women." It was a serious transgression. The elder monk looked at him, his face calm and compassionate. He paused for a moment and then said softly, "Brother, I left that woman by the river hours ago. Are you still carrying her?" This story reveals the heart of letting go. The younger monk was physically free of the woman, but mentally, he was carrying the heavy burden of his judgment, his attachment to the rules, and his story of how things should have been. The elder monk performed an act of simple, present moment compassion, and then immediately, completely, let it go. He did not carry the event with him. He was free. We are all the younger monk, carrying people, events, insults, and regrets long after they have passed. Letting go is the practice of setting them down, again and again. So how do we do this? How do we practice this art in the midst of our lives? The most powerful tool is always with us, the breath. The breath is the physical embodiment of release. The in-breath gathers, receives, and takes in. The out-breath releases, surrenders, and lets go. We can consciously use the out-breath as a tool for release. When you notice your mind clenching around a thought or a feeling, you can intentionally take a deep breath in, and on the out-breath, mentally and physically soften, release, and let go. It's a rhythmic, moment-to-moment training in non-clinging. The core of this practice is learning to observe our inner world without owning it. Our thoughts, feelings, and sensations are like leaves floating on the surface of a stream. Our habitual tendency is to reach into the stream and grab onto them, especially the ones we like or dislike. We pull them out, analyze them, and hold on to them. The practice of letting go is simply to sit on the bank of the stream and watch the leaves float by. We don't have to do anything about them. A difficult thought appears. We watch it come, we watch it stay for a moment, and we watch it go. By withdrawing the fuel of our obsessive attention, the fire of suffering naturally subsides. It is a shift from a clenched fist approach to life to an open hand approach. A clenched fist is a state of tension and can hold very little. An open hand is relaxed, receptive, and ready for whatever life brings. We have journeyed through the landscapes of the past, the mirages of the future, and the intricate story of the self. We have seen that the art of letting go is not one of erasure, but of release. It is not an act of indifference, but an act of profound kindness. It is a continuous practice, a constant choice to unburden the heart and mind from the burning coals of our attachments. This is the direct antidote to tanha. When we release our compulsive grip on what was and what we demand will be, a profound shift occurs. We are no longer scattered across the timeline of our anxieties and regrets. Our energy, our attention, our very being is gathered, collected, and brought back from the past and future into the only place where life is actually happening. This sacred practice of letting go is the gateway, and what lies on the other side of that gate is the quiet, luminous, and infinitely rich landscape of the present moment. Having journeyed through the courageous art of letting go, we arrive at a crucial question. When we release our grip on the heavy stones of the past and let loose the shimmering mirages of the future, where do we land? The answer is simple, yet it holds the key to the entirety of this practice. We land here, we land now. We arrive, for perhaps the first time, in the only place where life has ever been or ever will be happening, the present moment. This moment, right now, is our true home, our ultimate refuge. And yet, for most of us, it is the place we are most estranged from. Our bodies are here, but our minds are wanderers, restless ghosts, roaming the corridors of time. We have become a culture of homeless minds. Think of your own experience. Even in the last few minutes, your body has been sitting here, but where has your mind been? Perhaps it was replaying an earlier conversation, analyzing what you should have said. Perhaps it was jumping ahead, planning your evening meal, worrying about a work deadline tomorrow, or fantasizing about a future vacation. This is the mind's default state, time travel. It is constantly shuttling between the graveyard of the past and the fantasy land of the future. The past is a realm of memory. It is unchangeable, and our obsessive return to it is the source of our regrets, resentments, and sorrows. The future is a realm of imagination. It is unreal, and our compulsive projection into it is the source of our anxiety, our stress, and our fears. We are rarely ever home, rarely ever present for the one and only moment that is real. We live our lives as if we are rehearsing for a future performance. But the truth is, this is the performance. This is it. The present moment is not a stepping stone to a more important future moment. It is the destination. Why do we flee the present so relentlessly? Why is it so difficult to simply be here? One of the primary reasons is that the present moment can be uncomfortable. It can be filled with boredom, with physical pain, with restlessness, or with difficult emotions like sadness or anger. We use thoughts of the past and future as a form of anesthetic, a sophisticated distraction mechanism to avoid feeling what is actually here. When we feel the discomfort of boredom, we immediately reach for our phone to be transported into the more stimulating world of the future, the world of the endless scroll. When we feel the pang of sadness, we might retreat into a nostalgic, happy memory from the past. Our aversion to the raw, unfiltered reality of the present drives us into the more manageable worlds of thought. Furthermore, our entire culture is biased toward doing rather than being. We feel a constant, nagging pressure to be productive, to be planning, analyzing, achieving, and improving. To simply sit and be present with our own existence can feel like an act of laziness, a waste of precious time. We have forgotten that all our doing is utterly meaningless if we are not present to experience the life we are so busy building. So how do we come home? How do we train this restless, wandering mind to settle in the here and now? We need an anchor. We need something that can hold us steady amidst the turbulent waves of thought. The most perfect, elegant, and universally available anchor is the one thing we are doing in every moment of our lives. It is the breath. The breath is the ultimate tool for inhabiting the present. Why? Because the breath is always, without exception, in the present tense. You cannot breathe yesterday's breath. You cannot take tomorrow's breath. The breath you are taking right now is a present moment event. It is the bridge between the chaotic, abstract world of the mind and the grounded, tangible reality of the body. The practice is profoundly simple, though not always easy. It begins by finding a comfortable posture and gently closing your eyes if that feels right. Then, you simply bring your attention to the physical sensation of breathing. You don't need to change your breath, control it, or judge it. Your only task is to feel it. You might choose to rest your attention at the tip of the nostrils, feeling the subtle coolness of the air as it enters and the gentle warmth as it leaves. Or you might rest your attention on the abdomen, feeling the soft rise on the inhalation and the gentle fall on the exhalation. That is the entire instruction. Now, what will happen, guaranteed, is that within a few seconds, your mind will wander away. It will be hijacked by a thought, a memory, a plan. This is not a mistake. This is not a sign that you are a bad meditator. This is simply what minds do. The real practice, the moment of true mindfulness, is the moment you realize you have wandered. In that moment of realization, you have woken up, and then, with as much kindness and as little judgment as you can muster, you gently, patiently guide your attention back to the anchor of the breath. This process of wandering and returning, is the practice. It is like training a puppy. You don't beat the puppy for wandering off. You gently take it by the leash and lead it back home, again and again. Every return to the breath is a victory. It is an act of strengthening the muscle of attention. It is a moment of coming home. This is not a chore to be completed. It is a refuge to be sought, a sanctuary that is always available to you, no matter what chaos is unfolding in your external life or in the theater of your mind. Your breath is your portable, ever-present home base. We can expand this practice beyond the breath to include the entire landscape of the body. The body, like the breath, is always in the present moment. Your thoughts may be in the future, but the feeling of your feet on the floor is happening right now. You can close your eyes and bring your awareness to the points of contact your body is making with the chair or the floor. You can feel the weight, the pressure, the solidity. You can then expand your awareness to feel the subtle sensation of the air on your exposed skin, the temperature, the gentle movement. You can bring your attention to your hands and simply feel the aliveness within them, the subtle tingling or pulsing of energy that is always there but usually ignored. By systematically, gently resting your attention on these direct, physical sensations, you are pulling your awareness out of the abstract, conceptual world of thought and grounding it in the undeniable reality of the present. Anxiety is a thought about the future. The feeling of your hands resting in your lap is a present tense reality. When you are fully in your body, you are fully home. This practice of coming home is not meant to be confined to a meditation cushion in a quiet room. Its true power is revealed when we begin to integrate it into the fabric of our daily lives, transforming mundane activities into opportunities for profound presence. This is the art of finding the sacred in the ordinary. Take the simple act of drinking a cup of tea or coffee. Usually, we do this on autopilot. Our minds are 1,000 miles away, but we can choose to transform this into a meditation. We can feel the warmth of the cup in our hands. We can watch the steam rising. We can bring the cup to our nose and inhale the rich aroma. And when we take a sip, we can truly taste it, feeling the liquid in our mouth, a moment of pure, sensory presence. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh spoke of washing the dishes. He said, "We should wash the dishes, to wash the dishes, not to have clean dishes." This means being fully present with the act itself, feeling the warm water on our hands, seeing the iridescent soap bubbles, hearing the sound of the plates, smelling the fragrance of the soap. In these moments, the chore ceases to be a chore and becomes a moment of peace. The same is true for walking. Instead of rushing from one place to another lost in thought, you can feel the soles of your feet making contact with the ground, a simple, rhythmic, grounding experience. Life is not made up of a few big, dramatic events. It is made up of millions of these small, ordinary moments. By learning to be present for them, we infuse our entire life with a sense of peace and richness. There is a Zen story that captures the essence of this teaching with breathtaking power. A man is walking through the mountains when he is suddenly confronted by a ferocious, hungry tiger. He turns and runs, the tiger chasing close behind. He comes to the edge of a great cliff. With no other option, he grabs onto a thick vine hanging over the edge and lowers himself down. As he hangs there, he looks up and sees the snarling tiger at the top of the cliff, pawing at the vine. He looks down and sees another tiger on the rocks below, waiting for him to fall. His situation is utterly hopeless. Then, as he hangs there, suspended between two certain deaths, two small mice, one white and one black, appear from a crevice in the cliff and begin to nibble at the vine he is holding. He knows that soon the vine will snap. His life is hanging by a thread that is actively being severed. In this moment of ultimate peril, as he looks at the cliff face, he notices a small, wild strawberry plant growing there with a single, perfectly ripe, red berry. Holding onto the vine with one hand, he reaches out with the other, plucks the strawberry, and puts it in his mouth. The story ends with a simple line: how sweet it tasted. This story is a metaphor for our lives. The tiger above is the past, which is always chasing us. The tiger below is the future, with its certainty of death and endings. The vine is our life, and the two mice, one white and one black, are day and night, relentlessly nibbling away at our time. We are all hanging on this cliff, and yet, even here, in this perilous, impermanent situation, there is a strawberry. There is the sweetness of the present moment. There is the taste of the rain, the sight of the sky, the warmth of a kind word, the feeling of our own breath. The story teaches us that profound joy and richness are not contingent upon having a safe and secure situation. They are available in any and every moment, if only we have the presence of mind to notice. By learning to let go of the past and future, we arrive in our true home, this vibrant, living now. By using the breath and the body as our anchors, we learn how to stay home, even when the winds of thought try to blow us away. This is not an escape from life. It is a full, radical, and courageous engagement with life as it is. It is the end of rehearsal. It is the beginning of truly living. By learning to anchor ourselves in this dynamic now, we create a stable platform, a place of quiet observation, and from this stable ground, we can begin to see the nature of reality even more clearly. What is the first, most powerful truth we witness when we are truly present? We witness that this moment, our true home, is not a fixed address. It is not static. It is a ceaseless, dynamic, and unstoppable flow. It is a river of change. Having found our way back to the present moment, we cease to be tossed about in the chaotic currents of memory and fantasy. For the first time, we are able to sit peacefully on the riverbank of the now and simply watch the river of life as it flows by. And as we sit here, in this quiet space of awareness, what is the very first, most undeniable truth that we observe? We see that the river is never still. The water that passes before us now is different from the water that passed a moment ago, and different again from the water that is yet to come. We witness, in our own direct experience, the most fundamental characteristic of all existence. Everything flows, everything changes. In the ancient language of this wisdom, this universal truth is called anicca, or impermanence. Like the other great truths we have explored, impermanence is not a philosophy to be believed in. It is not a depressing dogma that says nothing lasts, and therefore nothing matters. It is a reality to be observed, a fact to be witnessed in every corner of our lives, from the vast movements of the cosmos to the subtle beating of our own hearts. To truly understand and embrace anicca is to unlock a profound source of peace, resilience, and wisdom. It is to learn how to skillfully sail on the river of life, rather than fruitlessly trying to stop its current. Most of our suffering does not arise from the fact of change itself, but from our deep-seated, often unconscious, resistance to it. Our minds, in a desperate attempt to create a sense of security and control, build an elaborate illusion of solidity. We look at a mountain and see a symbol of permanence, forgetting that it is a geological process, slowly being weathered by wind and rain. We look at our own bodies in the mirror and see a fixed entity, me, forgetting that it is a dynamic process of billions of cells, being born and dying in every moment. We enter a relationship and create a static idea of what that relationship is, forgetting that it is a living, evolving dance between two changing people. We cling to these illusions of permanence because they make us feel safe, but reality is not safe. It is alive, and life is synonymous with change. Our suffering, then, arises from the friction between our desire for permanence and the ceaseless reality of impermanence. This struggle against the flow of time manifests as a war we wage on two fronts. The first front is against the ending of pleasant experiences. When we are happy, when we are in love, when we are successful, or when we are experiencing a moment of profound joy, our instinct is to grasp, to cling. We try to build a dam in the river. We say, "This moment is perfect. I want it to last forever." We try to freeze frame life, to possess the happiness, to bottle the joy, but the river cannot be stopped. The pleasant moment inevitably passes, the peak experience fades, the joyful feeling subsides. And because we tried to build a dam, because we resisted the natural flow, the change feels like a catastrophic failure. We experience it as loss, as disappointment, as tragedy. We suffer not because the happy moment ended, but because we desperately tried to prevent it from doing so. The second front in our war is against the arising of unpleasant experiences. When pain, sadness, failure, or discomfort appears in the river of our lives, our instinct is to push it away. We try to heave a giant boulder into the current to divert its course. We say, "This shouldn't be happening. I don't want to feel this." We engage in denial, suppression, and distraction. We fight against the difficult emotion. We resist the painful reality. This struggle is utterly exhausting. It is like trying to swim upstream against a powerful current. We expend enormous amounts of energy, resisting what is already here. And this resistance, this internal battle, is often far more painful than the initial unpleasant experience itself. The core insight of anicca is that the river's flow bringing with it both pleasant and unpleasant things is not the problem. Our suffering is born from our futile and exhausting war against its natural, unceasing movement. When we first hear this, it can sound like a recipe for resignation, a bleak acceptance of a flawed world. But if we look deeper, we find that the truth of impermanence is not a curse, but the most profound of blessings. It is the secret ingredient that makes life, growth, and liberation possible. If things were permanent, nothing could ever change. A seed could never become a tree. A caterpillar could never become a butterfly. A misunderstanding could never be resolved and transformed into forgiveness. An enemy could never become a friend. A moment of ignorance could never blossom into wisdom. All life, all creativity, all healing, and all possibility are predicated on the fact that things are not fixed. Impermanence is the open door through which all newness enters the world. This truth becomes a powerful source of solace when we are in the midst of great difficulty, when you are experiencing deep grief, acute anxiety, physical pain, or the darkness of depression. It can feel as though that state will last forever. It can feel like a permanent reality, a room with no exits. The wisdom of impermanence is a gentle hand on the shoulder, whispering the profound truth: this too shall pass. It does not deny or invalidate the pain. The pain is real, but anicca provides perspective. It reminds us that our current state is a passing weather pattern, not the permanent climate of our soul. The storm is fierce, but it is not forever. The clouds will part. The sun will shine again. This knowledge does not necessarily remove the pain of the moment, but it can infuse it with a sense of hope and endurance, preventing it from hardening into utter despair. Paradoxically, this same wisdom that soothes our pain also intensifies our joy. We might think that knowing a happy moment will end would diminish it, would cast a shadow over it, but the opposite is true. It is the very fleetingness of beautiful things that makes them so precious. If roses bloomed forever, would we stop to appreciate their delicate fragrance and beauty with such reverence? If a sunset stretched across the sky for days, would we watch it with such a sense of awe? It is the knowledge that the moment is ephemeral that awakens us to its richness. Understanding impermanence replaces a complacent sense of entitlement with a vibrant, appreciative presence. It invites us to savor the sweetness of the strawberry, to truly listen to the laughter of a friend, to drink in the beauty of a piece of music, because we know that this precise, unique configuration of reality will never happen again. It is a call to engage with our lives fully, deeply, and with a heart full of gratitude. There is a timeless Sufi story that perfectly captures this dual power of impermanence. A mighty king, who had known both great triumphs and devastating defeats, summoned his wise advisors. He commanded them, "I want you to create for me a ring, and on it, you must inscribe a message that will be true and appropriate in every possible situation. When I am filled with pride in victory, it must humble me. When I am crushed by despair in defeat, it must give me hope." The wise men were stumped. What single message could possess such contradictory power? They consulted texts, they debated for weeks, but could find no answer. Finally, an old, humble artisan who had served the court for many years approached the king. He presented a simple gold band. The king looked at it and saw etched into its surface 4 simple words: "This too shall pass." In that moment, he understood. When he was on his victory parade, looking at the adoring crowds, a glance at the ring would remind him that his power, his glory, his very life were fleeting. It would quell his pride with a dose of humility. And when he was in his darkest hour, having lost a battle or a loved one, a glance at the ring would remind him that his sorrow, his despair, his pain were not his final destination. They were a part of the river, and the river always flows. We do not need a magical ring to practice this wisdom. We need only to learn to see anicca in the fabric of our own experience. We can start with the mind. Sit for a moment and simply watch the arising and passing of your thoughts. A thought about work appears. Where did it come from? It seems to come from nowhere. It stays for a few moments, and then, just as mysteriously, it vanishes. It is replaced by a memory, then a sensation, then a plan. The mind is a waterfall of impermanent events. You are not your thoughts, because your thoughts are constantly changing. We can also see it in the body. Notice the breath, each one a small lifetime, being born, living, and dying. Notice the constant stream of sensations, an itch that arises and passes, a feeling of warmth that fades, the pang of hunger that is replaced by the comfort of fullness. This body you call yours is not the same body it was 7 years ago. Most of its cells have been replaced. It is a process, not a thing. We can see it everywhere in the world around us. The steam rising from a cup of tea, the clouds moving across the sky, the sound of a car passing in the street. By consciously looking for the evidence of change, we begin to dissolve the mind's ingrained illusion of solidity. We begin to relax our grip, to align ourselves with the way things truly are. To embrace impermanence is to make peace with the fundamental nature of reality. We stop fighting a war we can never win. We learn to dance with the changing rhythms of life, to meet joy with grateful presence and sorrow with compassionate, resilient patience. Our choice is not whether or not life will change. That is a given. Our choice is whether we will flow with the river gracefully or suffer by trying to resist its unceasing current. As we become more established on this riverbank of the present, watching the ceaseless flow of our own experience, a deeper and even more profound question naturally begins to arise. If everything I observe is changing my thoughts, my feelings, my body, the world around me, then who or what is this I that is doing the watching? Is the observer also just a part of the river? Is the sense of a solid, permanent self, the ultimate watcher, also subject to the universal law of anicca? This question leads us directly to the next great insight, and perhaps the most radical of all. We have been sitting on the riverbank, watching the unceasing flow of life. We have witnessed our thoughts, our feelings, and the world around us appear, change, and disappear. We have come to see with our own eyes the universal truth of impermanence, anicca. This insight is profound, but it inevitably leads to the most radical and challenging investigation of all. As we watch the river of experience flow by, we must ask, who is watching? We have an unshakable, deeply ingrained, intuitive feeling that there is a watcher. There is an I at the center of it all, a permanent, continuous self who is the thinker of the thoughts, the feeler of the feelings, and the captain of this ship. This is the ghost in the machine, the CEO in the control room of the mind, the core of our being. The next great truth of this wisdom, and the most liberating, asks us to turn the spotlight of our awareness onto this very watcher. It asks us to go on an honest search for this solid, separate self. This truth is known as anatta, or no self. Let us be clear from the outset. The teaching of no self is not a declaration that you do not exist. It is not a nihilistic philosophy that leads to a feeling of nothingness or annihilation. You are here, reading these words, breathing this air. The purpose of investigating anatta is not to destroy the self, but to see it clearly for what it is, and in doing so, to be freed from the immense burden that our mistaken idea of self creates. It is an invitation to see that the self we believe to be a solid, independent noun is, in fact, a dynamic, interconnected verb. To begin this investigation, we can use the same analytical method the Buddha himself employed. He suggested that everything we could possibly identify as ourself can be categorized into one of 5 groups, known as the 5 aggregates, or skandhas. These are form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. If a permanent, unchanging self exists, it must be found somewhere within these 5 categories. So, let us undertake this search together, with open and honest curiosity. First, let us look at form, which primarily means our physical body. Is this body my true self? At first glance, It seems so. We point to it and say, "This is me." But let's look closer. This body is in a constant state of flux, governed by the law of anicca. It was once the body of an infant, then a child, an adolescent, and one day it will be the body of an old person. Is it the same body? Its cells are constantly dying and being replaced. It is composed entirely of non-self elements, the food, water, and air we have taken in from the world. If you stopped eating and breathing, this body would cease to exist. Furthermore, it often acts against our will. It gets sick, it feels pain, it ages, and eventually, it will die, regardless of what the I in our head wants. We treat it like a possession, saying "my body," but even a possession is separate from its owner. If this body is impermanent, dependent on outside conditions, and not fully under our control, how can it be our true, unchanging self? So, we look at the first aggregate and conclude, I am not my body. So, let's move to the next category. Feelings. Am I my feelings? When joy arises, we say I am happy. When sorrow arises, we say I am sad. We identify completely with the emotion of the moment. But feelings are like the weather. They are fleeting and utterly impersonal. A storm of anger can sweep through the mind, rage for a while, and then dissipate. A sunny spell of happiness can brighten our world, but it too will eventually be replaced by other clouds. Would you point to a thunderstorm and say, I am that storm? Or point to a clear blue sky and say, I am that sky? Of course not. We understand that we are the space in which the weather of feelings occurs. Feelings are visitors that come and go. They are impermanent, unreliable, and they arise due to conditions, not because a central I decides to feel them. So, we must conclude, I am not my feelings. The third aggregate is perceptions. This is the faculty of the mind that recognizes, names, and labels our experience. It's the part of the mind that sees a shape and color and says, blue car, or tastes a sensation and labels it sweet. It also includes our conceptual judgments, good, bad, right, wrong. Are these labels and perceptions my true self? These are clearly learned processes. We learned the word car. We were conditioned by our culture and upbringing to label certain things as good and others as bad. Our perceptions are tools we use to navigate the world, but they are not our essential nature. They are like the software running on a computer. They are not the computer itself. They are also, of course, impermanent and subject to change. So, we must conclude, I am not my perceptions. Now we come to the fourth and perhaps trickiest aggregate, mental formations. This is the busiest and noisiest part of our mind. It includes all our thoughts, beliefs, opinions, memories, habits, plans, and intentions. This is where most of us locate our sense of self. We believe we are our thoughts, our intellect, our unique combination of beliefs and opinions. But let's apply the same honest investigation. Are you your thoughts? A thought, like a cloud, appears in the mind from seemingly nowhere, stays for a moment, and then vanishes. Your opinions have surely changed over the years. The political beliefs you held as a teenager may be different now. The things you once thought were important may now seem trivial. If you can observe a thought, you cannot be the thought. The one who is aware of the thought must be different from the thought itself. This entire stream of inner chatter is a ceaseless, flowing river. It is another expression of anicca. Therefore, as busy and as personal as they feel, we must conclude, I am not my mental formations. This leaves only one last refuge for the self to hide, consciousness itself. We might think, Okay, I am not my body, my feelings, or my thoughts, but I must be the awareness that knows all of these things. I am the pure consciousness, the silent watcher. This is a very subtle and compelling idea, but the wisdom of this path investigates even this. It reveals that consciousness is not a single, continuous, independent entity, like a spotlight that is always on. Instead, consciousness is a process that arises in dependence on conditions. It is not a thing, but an event. For example, visual consciousness arises only when three things come together: an eye, a sense organ, a form, a sense object, and the faculty of sight. Without an object to see, there is no seeing consciousness. Auditory consciousness arises only when an ear meets a sound. It is a series of distinct, flickering moments of awareness, each one dependent on a sense organ and a sense object. It is not a permanent, monolithic I who is aware. It too is part of the impermanent, dependent, flowing river of experience. The great Buddhist sage Nagasena once illustrated this with a brilliant and simple analogy. A Greek king named Melinda, a man of great intellect, came to question him. The king arrived in a magnificent chariot. After they had exchanged greetings, Nagasena gestured to the chariot and asked, "Your Majesty, how did you arrive here?" "In a chariot," the king replied. "Your Majesty," Nagasena continued, "what is this chariot? Is it the wheels?" "No, venerable sir," said the king. "Is it the axle, the frame, the yoke, the reins?" To each question, the king had to answer no. Nagasena then declared, "Then, Your Majesty, chariot is just a sound, a convenient name, a useful designation for a collection of parts, skillfully assembled. Apart from its components, there is no separate, independent chariot to be found." The king was delighted by this wisdom and agreed. Nagasena then turned the analogy back on himself. He said, "Just as chariot is a designation for the collection of its parts, Nagasena is a designation for the collection of these 5 aggregates of form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Outside of these 5 changing processes, there is no permanent, independent Nagasena to be found." When we hear this, our first reaction might be one of fear or disorientation. If there is no solid self, am I just a machine? Does anything matter? But this is a misunderstanding. The liberation of anatta is not a denial of our humanity, but an affirmation of our freedom. Think of the immense energy we spend protecting and defending this fictional self. We are constantly polishing our ego, defending our opinions, as if our very existence depends on being right. When someone insults us, we feel wounded because we believe their words have pierced a solid, real core. But if the self is just a process, an ever-changing collection of thoughts and feelings, then an insult is just a sound wave hitting an eardrum, creating an unpleasant but temporary feeling in a flowing process. There is no solid target for the arrow to hit. We become less defensive, less fragile, more resilient. Furthermore, when the hard, sharp boundary we draw around me begins to soften and dissolve, the equally hard boundary we draw around you also begins to dissolve. We see that other people are also not solid, fixed entities, but flowing processes of the 5 aggregates, driven by their own causes and conditions. This is the foundation of true compassion. When we see the illusion of the separate self, we begin to feel the profound reality of our connection to everything and everyone else. To see anatta is to finally take off a heavy suit of armor that we did not even realize we were wearing. Life ceases to be a personal drama with me as the embattled hero. Instead, it becomes a vast, mysterious, and beautiful dance of interconnected processes. We can finally relax. We don't have to spend our lives propping up and defending a fictional character. We can participate in the flow of life with more lightness, more curiosity, and more joy. This is not the destruction of the self, but the end of a lifelong case of mistaken identity. It is the wisdom that understands that self is not a noun, but a verb. It is a process of selfing that the mind does from moment to moment. As we rest in this understanding, seeing that the self is not a solid, isolated island, but a flowing river made up of countless changing parts, a new and beautiful question arises. If this body is not ultimately me, what is it made of? If this thought is not ultimately mine, where did it come from? When we see that the self is empty of any separate, independent existence, we are naturally led to see what it is full of. It is full of the entire universe. This investigation takes us from the emptiness of self to the fullness of connection, to the profound and interwoven truth of interbeing. Our investigation has taken us on a remarkable journey inward. We searched for a solid, separate, independent self, a permanent I at the center of our experience, and we found nothing there. We looked into the 5 aggregates of our being: body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness, and saw only a ceaseless, flowing river of impermanent processes. This realization of no self, anatta, can at first feel like a kind of emptiness, a void where we expected to find a solid core. But this is not the emptiness of nothingness. It is not a cold, desolate void. It is a spacious, open, and liberating emptiness, pregnant with a new and far more profound understanding of who we truly are. This is where we pivot from what the self is empty of a separate existence to what the self is full of. And the answer is, it is full of the entire universe. This is the insight of interbeing. Interbeing is a beautiful modern term, popularized by the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh for the ancient Buddhist teaching of dependent co-arising. It is the positive expression of no self. It declares that nothing has ever existed in isolation. To be is always to interbe. Everything in the cosmos leans on everything else for its existence. We are not separate nouns, but interconnected verbs. We are not isolated islands, but waves in a single, vast ocean. This is not a poetic sentiment. It is a description of reality that we can see for ourselves if we only learn how to look deeply. Let us begin this looking with a simple object, something you might have nearby right now, a single sheet of paper. Our ordinary way of seeing perceives a sheet of paper as a singular, separate object. But let us look with the eyes of interbeing. Let us look deeply into the paper. As you look, can you see the cloud floating in a blue sky? It may seem strange, but think for a moment. Without a cloud, there can be no rain. Without rain, trees cannot grow. And without trees, we cannot make paper. So the cloud is undeniably inside the sheet of paper. If you were to remove the cloud, the paper could not exist. Now look again. Can you see the sunshine? The sunshine is essential for the tree to grow through photosynthesis. So, the sunlight is also in the paper. Can you see the logger who cut down the tree, carrying it to the mill? You can see his axe, his strength, and his daily work. And if you look into the logger, you can see his parents, who gave him life. And you can see the wheat that made the bread he ate for his breakfast that morning, and the farmer who grew the wheat, and the earth, and the sun that nourished it. You can see the person who manufactured the paper at the mill, and the truck driver who brought it to the store. You can see your own hand reaching out to buy it. Everything is there. If we were to patiently return each of these non-paper elements to its source, we return the sunshine to the sun, the cloud to the sky, the tree to the forest, the logger to his parents, the sheet of paper would vanish. It is empty of any separate, independent existence, but it is full of the entire cosmos. To be, it must be with everything else. Now, let us turn this same deep looking upon ourselves. We look at our own hand. We are accustomed to thinking, this is my hand, it is me. But let us look with the eyes of interbeing. This hand is not just yours. It is the hand of your mother, and your father, and your grandparents, and all your ancestors stretching back through time. Their DNA, their life, is present in these very cells. This hand is also made of the food you ate this morning, the vegetables from the earth, the sunlight that nourished them, the minerals in the soil, the rain that watered them all, are present, right now, as your hand. This hand is made of non-hand elements. If you were to return your ancestors to the past, and the sunshine to the sun, and the food to the earth, your hand would cease to be. Let us look at our mind, at a single thought or feeling that we identify as mine. Perhaps it is a feeling of happiness. Where did it come from? Maybe it was triggered by a kind word from a friend. So that friend, and the entire web of causes and conditions that brought that friend into your life, are present in your feeling of happiness. Perhaps you have a strong political opinion. Is that opinion truly yours? It was shaped by the books you have read, the teachers you have had, the conversations you have participated in, the language you speak, and the culture you were raised in. A single opinion contains centuries of human history, philosophy, and struggle. Our minds, which feel so private and personal, are in fact a vast, collaborative network, a meeting place for the entire universe of ideas and experiences. The boundary we draw between our inner world and the outer world is a fiction. The outer world is constantly flowing through us, becoming our inner world, which in turn expresses itself as action, influencing the outer world. This vision of profound, radical interconnectedness is beautifully captured in a metaphor from a Mahayana scripture called the Avatamsaka Sutra. It describes the celestial palace of the deity Indra. In this palace, there hangs a wondrous net that stretches out infinitely in all directions. At every single knot in this net, there hangs a single, brilliant, multifaceted jewel. The net is structured in such a way that if you look closely at the polished surface of any one jewel, you will see reflected in it every other jewel in the entire infinite net. And the magic does not stop there. Within each reflection of each jewel, you will again see the reflections of all the other jewels, and so on, ad infinitum. Each of us is a jewel in this cosmic net. Our existence is not defined by our isolated essence, but by our intimate relationship with, and our reflection of, every other jewel. Your being contains my being. My being contains the being of the trees, the clouds, the stars. The pain in one part of the net causes the entire net to tremble. The joy in one jewel is reflected, shimmering, throughout the entire expanse. This is not just a beautiful idea. It is a vision of the fundamental structure of reality. We are not separate. We are individual. Yes, each jewel is unique, but we are not, and can never be, separate. When we begin to absorb the implications of this truth, it has the power to heal the deepest wounds of the human heart. Consider the modern epidemic of loneliness. We feel isolated, cut off, alienated from others and from the world. This feeling of loneliness is a form of suffering born directly from the illusion of a separate self. How can we possibly be lonely when we contain the entire universe? How can we feel separate when we are inextricably woven into the fabric of Indra's net? To feel lonely is simply a cognitive error, a failure to see the truth of our condition. The practice of contemplating into being is the direct antidote. It fosters a deep, unshakable sense of belonging, not to a small family, tribe, or nation, but to the entire web of life, to existence itself. This insight also becomes the ultimate foundation for ethics and morality. Many ethical systems are based on a set of external rules or the fear of punishment. The ethic of interbeing arises naturally from clear seeing. If you truly understand that you inter-are with the river, you will not pollute it, because you understand that you are polluting yourself. If you truly see that the other person is a jewel in the same net as you, that their being is reflected in yours, you will not harm them with your words or actions, because you understand that to harm them is to harm yourself. Compassion and ecological responsibility cease to be duties we must perform. They become the natural, spontaneous expression of a mind that sees things as they are. It is the simple wisdom of the body. The left hand does not get angry and hit the right hand if it makes a mistake. It simply helps it. They are part of the same whole. Thus, the journey into the emptiness of no self does not leave us in a void. It delivers us into the radiant fullness of interbeing. We see that we are not a separate drop of water, but a unique and beautiful wave in the single ocean of existence. The wave has its own form, its own character, its own duration, but the water that constitutes the wave is the same water as the entire ocean. The wave is never, for a single moment, separate from the ocean. This is our reality. We are unique expressions of a single, interconnected, and sacred whole. When we see, truly see, this beautiful and intricate dance of connection, when we feel in the very marrow of our bones that the well-being of others is our well-being, and that their suffering is our suffering, our hearts cannot help but respond. This clear vision of our shared existence softens the hard shell of the ego. It melts the frozen armor of separation. It becomes the rich, fertile soil from which the most beautiful qualities of the human heart, kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity can naturally begin to grow. The understanding of our oneness is the true foundation for boundless love. Having journeyed from the emptiness of a separate self to the profound fullness of interbeing, we arrive at a new and beautiful landscape. We have seen with the eyes of wisdom that we are not isolated islands, but interconnected jewels in a vast cosmic net. This seeing, this understanding, is transformative, but wisdom without heart can be dry and distant. The ultimate path is one that integrates both clarity of mind and warmth of heart. Now that we have seen our connection, how do we begin to feel it? How do we translate this intellectual understanding into a living, breathing, emotional reality? The answer lies in the cultivation of 4 sublime states of heart, known as the Brahma Viharas, or the divine abodes. These are the emotional fruits that grow naturally from the soil of wisdom. We begin with the first, the foundational, and the most essential of these heart qualities. We begin with metta. Metta is a Pali word that is often translated as loving kindness. It is a gentle, unconditional, and boundless goodwill. It is a quiet and steady warmth that we can learn to cultivate and radiate, first toward ourselves, and then toward all of existence. But before we learn how to practice it, it is crucial to understand what metta is not. Our modern understanding of love is often tangled with complex and painful emotions. Metta is not the possessive, grasping, and often conditional state of romantic love which so often whispers, "I love you because you make me feel good." Metta is the selfless wish. May you feel good. It is not the transactional affection that expects something in return. It is not the anxious, clinging love we often feel for our family, which can be mixed with fear and worry. Metta is freer, more spacious. It is also not a superficial sentimentality, a forced sweetness, or a naive belief that we must be nice all the time. Metta is a resilient and stable attitude of friendliness. It is like the sun, which shines its warmth down on all things without discrimination, on the beautiful rose and the humble weed, on the saint and the sinner, on the friend and the enemy. It does not judge, it simply radiates. The journey of cultivating metta begins in the most intimate and often the most difficult place, with ourselves. In many Western cultures, the idea of directing love toward oneself can feel uncomfortable, even selfish or narcissistic. We are often taught that self-criticism is a virtue, a tool for improvement, and that self-love is an indulgence. But this wisdom tradition understands a fundamental truth. We cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot offer water to a thirsty person if your own well is dry. Directing loving kindness toward ourselves is not an act of ego. It is the necessary and compassionate act of filling our own well, so that we have an abundance of warmth and goodwill to offer the world. It is the first instruction you hear on an airplane. In case of an emergency, put on your own oxygen mask before assisting others. To offer metta to ourselves is to put on our own spiritual oxygen mask. So how do we begin? The practice is one of gentle intention. Find a comfortable posture, a position that embodies a sense of dignity and ease. You can close your eyes and take a few deep breaths, allowing the body to soften. Then, bring your awareness to your own heart space. And here, you begin to plant the seeds of kindness by silently repeating a few simple, traditional phrases. The words are not magic, but they are powerful tools for directing the mind and heart. You can use phrases such as, "May I be happy," "May I be healthy," "May I be safe," "May I live with ease." As you repeat these phrases, do not worry about trying to force a particular feeling. For many of us, when we first try this, what arises is not a feeling of love, but its opposite, feelings of unworthiness, doubt, or even irritation. This is completely normal. The practice is not to feel a certain way, but to continue offering the kind intention. The intention is the seed. The feeling is the flower, which will bloom in its own time. Your only job is to gently repeat the phrases, like a mother softly singing a lullaby to a beloved child. If feelings of self-criticism arise, the practice is to meet even those difficult thoughts with metta. Ah, the inner critic is here. May this feeling of judgment also be held in kindness. You are creating a safe, warm, and friendly inner environment, perhaps for the first time in your life. Stay with this first stage for as long as you need. It is the foundation upon which everything else is built. Once you have established a sense of gentle friendliness toward yourself, you can begin to expand the circle of metta outward. The next traditional stage is to bring to mind a benefactor, respected friend, a cherished teacher, or a dear family member. Choose someone for whom it is very easy to feel warmth and gratitude. Picture them in your mind's eye, see them smiling, and then direct the same warm wishes toward them. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live with ease. Notice how the feeling of warmth may flow more easily toward this person. Allow yourself to bask in that feeling of simple, uncomplicated goodwill. There is no agenda here. No need for them to even know you are doing this. It is a silent offering of the heart. a practice that softens and gladdens your own mind as you do it. After spending some time with your benefactor, you expand the circle once more to include a neutral person. This is someone you see in your daily life, but for whom you feel neither strong like nor dislike. It could be the cashier at the grocery store, the person who delivers your mail, or a neighbor you see in passing. Bring this person to mind, and with the same gentle intention, offer them the same phrases of loving kindness. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live with ease. This stage is crucial. It begins to break down the artificial barriers of indifference that we erect between ourselves and the vast majority of humanity. We start to see that this neutral person is, just like us, a being who wants to be happy and to avoid suffering. We are awakening our sense of shared humanity, extending our circle of care beyond our immediate tribe. Now comes the most challenging and perhaps the most transformative stage of the practice. Here, we are invited to bring to mind a difficult person, someone who has hurt us, angered us, or with whom we have a conflict. This requires great care and wisdom. The point is not to condone their harmful actions or to force ourselves to feel a warm, fuzzy affection for them. The point is to recognize that holding on to hatred, resentment, and anger is a poison that we drink ourselves, hoping it will harm the other person. This stage is a radical act of self-liberation. It is about freeing our own heart from the prison of bitterness. We can start by acknowledging their humanity, recognizing that their harmful actions most likely arise from their own deep suffering, their own confusion, and their own thirst. Perhaps you cannot yet wish them happiness. In the same way you do a friend, you can start with a simpler wish. May you be free from your own anger and hatred. May you find the peace that you are so desperately looking for. In doing this, you are not absolving them. You are healing yourself. You are choosing peace over conflict in the one place you have control, your own heart. Finally, having moved through these stages, you let go of all specific individuals and allow the feeling of metta to become boundless. You radiate this gentle warmth outward in all directions, to the front, to the back, to the left, to the right, above, and below. You extend it to all beings, without exception, to your friends, your family, your neighbors, to people in your city, your country, and all countries, to all human beings, whatever their background, beliefs, or actions. You extend it to the animals, the birds in the sky, the creatures on the land, the fish in the water. You extend it to all beings, seen and unseen, big and small, near and far. Just as the sun shines its light impartially on everything, you allow this attitude of goodwill, this gentle wish for all to be well, to radiate from your heart and permeate the entire universe. This practice is not merely a passive, pleasant daydream. It is a powerful agent of transformation. There is a story of the Buddha, whose jealous cousin Devadatta sent a raging, intoxicated elephant to kill him. As the terrifying beast charged, the Buddha's disciples panicked. But the Buddha stood his ground, perfectly calm. He did not raise a weapon or shout a command. He simply radiated a powerful, unwavering field of pure metta toward the enraged animal. As the elephant entered this field of loving kindness, its rage subsided. It slowed its charge, knelt before the Buddha, and became calm. This story illustrates that metta is not a weak or sentimental emotion. It is a powerful force that can tame the wildest energies, both within ourselves and in the world. Modern science is beginning to confirm what these ancient contemplative traditions have known for millennia. Neuroscientists studying the brains of long-term meditators have found that the practice of loving kindness and compassion meditation can create measurable changes in the brain, strengthening the neural circuits associated with empathy, positivity, and emotional resilience. It is a form of mental training that rewires our default settings from suspicion and anxiety to kindness and connection. Metta, then, is the active and intentional cultivation of a warm, friendly, and benevolent heart. It is the emotional response to the wisdom of interbeing. When we know we are all connected, kindness becomes the most logical and natural way to live. It begins with the radical act of befriending ourselves and expands outward until it embraces all of life without exception. It is the simple, profound wish for all beings to be happy. But as we practice this, our hearts become more sensitive, and we become acutely aware that a primary obstacle to happiness is the universal reality of suffering. Our goodwill naturally begins to develop a more focused, responsive, and tender quality. It becomes a deep wish, not just for others to be happy, but for them to be free from their pain. This responsive trembling of the heart is the next of the divine abodes. It is the sacred state of compassion. In our cultivation of the heart, we began with metta, the gentle, radiant sun of loving kindness, offering its warmth without condition or discrimination. We learned to wish for ourselves and for all beings to be happy. But what happens when this warm sunlight of metta falls upon a landscape of pain? What is the heart's response when it encounters the undeniable reality of suffering in the world? The light does not turn away. It does not recoil in fear. Instead, it gathers, it focuses, and it shines with a particular tenderness and warmth upon the place that hurts. This focused, responsive, and trembling quality of the heart is the second of the 4 divine abodes. It is karuna, or compassion. If metta is the wish, may all beings be happy, then karuna is the wish, may all beings be free from suffering. It is the heart's active response to pain. It is not a passive sadness, but a vibrant, engaged empathy that motivates us to act. The word itself is sometimes translated as the trembling or quivering of the heart, the visceral bodily response we feel when we witness the suffering of another and recognize our shared vulnerability. It is here that we must draw a critical distinction, for true compassion is often confused with its near and far less helpful relatives. The first is pity. Pity looks down from above. It creates a sense of distance and superiority, a subtle thought of, "You poor thing. I am so glad I am not in your position." Pity reinforces the ego and the illusion of separation. Compassion, on the other hand, dismantles the ego. It meets the other at eye level. It closes the distance and declares, "Your suffering is my suffering. We are in this together." It arises from the deep wisdom of interbeing, the recognition that the other is not truly other. The second, more insidious counterfeit of compassion is often called idiot compassion or empathic distress. This is the experience of being so overwhelmed by another's pain that we drown in it ourselves. We see a friend in grief, and we become so consumed by their sadness that we become paralyzed, anxious, and unable to offer any real support. We become another victim, another problem to be solved, rather than a source of strength and solace. True karuna is not this. True compassion is imbued with wisdom and resilience. It is a vast, stable heart, like a great mountain, that can allow the storms of sorrow to pass over it without being eroded or destroyed. It is the strength to be present with pain or own or another's without being consumed by it. It is what allows a doctor to perform surgery with a steady hand, a therapist to listen to trauma without falling apart, and a parent to soothe a crying child without panicking. It is a powerful stable, and deeply courageous state of heart. Just as with metta, the cultivation of this boundless compassion must begin with ourselves. If we cannot be compassionate with our own failures, our own pain, and our own imperfections, we will have no genuine capacity to meet the suffering of others. For many of us, our default response to our own pain is one of harsh judgment. When we make a mistake, the voice of the inner critic rises up, filled with blame and recrimination. When we feel weak, sad, or afraid, we often tell ourselves to toughen up, or we criticize ourselves for not being stronger. This internal war is a profound source of suffering. Self-compassion is the direct antidote. It is the practice of turning the warmth and tenderness of karuna inward. It is the choice to treat ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer to a dear friend who was going through a difficult time. The practice of self-compassion can be structured in 3 simple yet powerful steps. The first is simply to acknowledge our pain with mindfulness. Instead of fighting or ignoring the difficult feeling, we turn toward it. We can say to ourselves, internally, "This is a moment of suffering. This hurts." This simple validation is incredibly powerful. It stops the war. The second step is to connect our personal suffering with the universal experience of being human. We remind ourselves, suffering is a part of life. Making mistakes is a part of life. I am not the only one who feels this way. This is our shared human condition. This step is the antidote to the feeling of isolation that so often accompanies shame and pain. It reminds us that our suffering connects us to humanity rather than separating us from it. The third step is to offer ourselves active kindness. You can place a hand gently over your heart, feeling the warmth and pressure, a simple gesture of soothing. And you can offer yourself kind words, just as you would to a friend. May I be kind to myself in this moment. May I give myself the compassion that I need. May I accept myself just as I am. This practice is not self-pity or self-indulgence. It is the foundation of emotional resilience. When we learn to be a true friend to ourselves, we develop an inner strength that allows us to face the world with an open and courageous heart. From this foundation of self-compassion, we can then begin to extend the practice outward. Bring to mind someone you care about who is currently suffering. It could be a friend dealing with an illness, a family member going through a difficult time, or anyone you love who is in pain. Picture them in your mind. Allow yourself to connect with the reality of their struggle. Then, holding them in your heart, silently offer them the phrases of compassion. May you be free from your suffering. May you be free from your pain and sorrow. May you have the strength to meet the challenges in your life. May you find peace. Feel the genuine wish in your heart for their suffering to end. This is not a magical prayer to fix their problems, but a powerful way of attuning your own heart to a state of caring and readiness to help. From here, you can expand the circle, just as with metta. You can bring to mind the suffering of strangers you have heard about in the news. You can think of the collective suffering of communities affected by poverty, war, or natural disaster. You can even extend compassion to the animal kingdom, recognizing the suffering that occurs there. The practice is to allow your heart to remain open and tender, to bear witness to the pain in the world without shutting down. The true test of karuna is to extend it toward those who cause suffering. This is where wisdom is essential. To have compassion for a violent person is not to condone their actions. It is to recognize, with profound clarity, that their harmful actions are the result of their own deep suffering. Their anger, hatred, and greed are the very source of their own torment. The compassionate wish, then, is not, may you get away with what you have done, but rather, may you be free from the anger, ignorance, and pain that cause you to harm others, and, in doing so, to destroy your own peace. This is the most profound form of compassion, one that sees beyond the action to the suffering that drives it. There is no more powerful story of this fearless compassion than that of the Buddha and the murderous bandit, Angulimala. Angulimala was a terrifying figure who haunted the forests, killing travelers and wearing a garland made from their fingers. An entire region was paralyzed with fear. The king was sending an army to capture him. Yet the Buddha, hearing of this man's plight, simply walked into the forest, alone and unarmed. Angulimala saw him coming and was delighted, thinking he had found an easy victim. He began to run after the Buddha. But a strange thing happened. Though the Buddha was only walking at a normal pace, Angulimala, running with all his might, could not catch up to him. Exhausted and confused, he shouted, "Stop, monk!" The Buddha, still walking calmly, replied, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped." In the dialogue that followed, the Buddha spoke to Angulimala, not with fear or condemnation, but with an unshakable and powerful compassion. He saw past the monster to the confused, suffering man beneath. This radiant compassion broke through Angulimala's lifetime of rage and delusion, leading him to lay down his sword and completely transform his life. This story teaches us that true compassion is not a weak, sentimental feeling. It is a fearless and transformative force, capable of healing the deepest wounds of the human spirit. Compassion, then, is the active, engaged, and resilient heart that moves towards suffering, not away from it. It is born of the wisdom that sees our interconnectedness and is nurtured by the kindness we first learn to offer ourselves. It is the unwavering commitment to be present with the pain of the world, to bear witness to it, and to act in whatever way we can to alleviate it. With metta, our loving kindness, we learn to share in the universal wish for happiness. With karuna, our compassion, we learn to share in the universal wish to be free from suffering. We have now cultivated a heart that can be with both the joys and the sorrows of life. But what happens when we witness the success, the good fortune, and the happiness of others? All too often, our ordinary mind reacts with the subtle but corrosive poison of jealousy and comparison. The next great cultivation of the heart is the direct antidote to this poison. It is the practice of learning to celebrate the joy of others as if it were our own. This is the sublime and beautiful state of sympathetic joy. Ardian Iling, having walked the Eightfold Path, having laid the foundations of wisdom, ethical living, and mental discipline, we can now venture deeper into the very heart of reality, as perceived through this ancient lens. We begin with a law so fundamental, so all-pervasive, that we often fail to see it, like a fish failing to see the water in which it swims. This is the law of impermanence, or as it is known in the Pali language, anicca. It is the simple, yet profoundly challenging truth that nothing lasts. Everything that has a beginning, has a middle, and has an end. There are no exceptions. This is not presented as a grim forecast or a cause for despair. In fact, it is offered as a key that unlocks a profound and resilient form of peace. The suffering we experience does not arise from the fact that things change, but from our deeply ingrained, often unconscious insistence that they should not. We spend our lives trying to build permanent homes on shifting sands, and then we are bewildered and hurt when the tide inevitably comes in. The wisdom of anicca is not about learning to prevent the tide, but about learning to swim to float, to dance with the rhythm of the ocean of existence. Consider for a moment the things we cling to, the sources of our greatest joys and deepest sorrows. We experience a moment of perfect happiness, perhaps on a warm summer evening with people we love, a moment of triumph at work, or the simple bliss of a perfect cup of coffee. Our immediate, instinctual reaction is to grasp it, to hold on to it. We take a picture. We tell ourselves, this is it. This is what I want to feel forever. But the sun sets, the friends go home, the promotion becomes the new normal. The coffee cup is empty, and a subtle sadness creeps in, a shadow of loss that tinges even our most beautiful memories. This is the friction, the suffering, created by rubbing our desire for permanence against the unyielding reality of change. We do the same with what is unpleasant. We fight against aging, seeing every new line on our face as a personal failure rather than a natural unfolding. We deny illness, pushing away the body's signals of fatigue or pain. We are shocked and outraged by loss, as if the universe has broken some sacred contract with us. We build our identity, our sense of self, on things that are inherently unstable. Our youth, our health, our job titles, our relationships, our possessions. We treat them like solid rock and then feel shattered when they reveal themselves to be merely clouds, constantly forming, shifting, and dissolving. The deepest and most universal encounter with this truth, of course, is loss. And there is no story that illustrates this more poignantly than that of a woman named Kisa Gotami. She was a young mother in the time of the Buddha, and her heart was full, for she had a beautiful baby son. But one day, the child fell ill and died. Kisa Gotami was consumed by a grief so absolute, so shattering, that her mind refused to accept it. She could not see her son as dead, only as terribly sick. She picked up his small, still body and went from house to house, from person to person, desperately seeking medicine that could cure him. People looked at her with pity, some with fear. They told her, "The boy is gone. There is no medicine for the dead." But she could not hear them. Her grief was a roaring in her ears. Finally, a wise old man, seeing her torment, suggested she go to the one person who might have an answer, the Buddha. Clutching her child, she ran to the Buddha and laid her story at his feet, begging him for the miracle cure she so desperately needed. The Buddha looked at her, not with pity, but with a vast and steady compassion. He did not dismiss her. He did not tell her to accept reality. He met her where she was. He said, "You have done well to come to me. There is a cure, but to make it, I require a special ingredient. I need you to bring me a single mustard seed." Kisa Gotami's heart soared with hope. A mustard seed that was so simple. But then the Buddha added one condition. You must bring the mustard seed from a house where no one has ever died. A house that has never known loss, filled with a renewed sense of purpose. She began her quest. She went to the first house in the village. "The Buddha has sent me," she said. "I need a mustard seed to make a medicine for my son. Do you have one?" "Of course," the woman of the house replied. "Let me get it for you." As the woman turned to go, Kisa Gotami remembered the condition. "Wait," she asked. "Has anyone in this house ever died? Has your family known loss?" The woman's face softened with sadness. "Oh, my dear," she said, "you remind me of my own pain. The living are few, but the dead are many. Just last year, I lost my husband." With a heavy heart, Kisa Gotami moved to the next house, and the next, and the one after that. The story was the same everywhere. Every door she knocked on, every family she spoke to, had a mustard seed to offer, and every single family had a story of loss. One had lost a parent, another, a sister, another, a child, just like her own. The mustard seeds were plentiful, but a house untouched by death, a house untouched by impermanence, was nowhere to be found. As the day wore on, she walked from the village into the twilight of the forest, the truth slowly dawning on her, not as a harsh intellectual fact, but as a deep, embodied understanding. Her grief, which had felt so uniquely hers, so isolating in its intensity, began to soften. She saw that her pain was not a solitary island, but part of a vast, shared ocean of human experience. She was not alone. She was connected to every single person she had spoken to that day, connected by the universal thread of love and loss. She gently laid her son's body down in the forest. The fire of her frantic denial finally extinguished, replaced by the calm, clear light of acceptance. She returned to the Buddha, no longer asking for a cure, but ready to understand. She had not found the magical mustard seed, but she had found the wisdom of Anicca. She had learned that resisting the great river of change is madness, but understanding its flow is the beginning of peace. This wisdom is not something we must wait for tragedy to teach us. We can cultivate it gently in our daily lives. This is a core function of mindfulness practice. When you sit and follow your breath, you are watching impermanence in real time. Each in-breath is born, it lives, and it dissolves. Each out-breath follows the same pattern. It is a constant, gentle rhythm of arising and passing away. When you notice a thought, you can observe it. Where did it come from? It appears, unbidden. It may linger for a moment, and then, without you doing anything, it vanishes. You can do the same with emotions. A wave of sadness, or joy, or irritation rises up, crests, and then subsides, if you allow it to. By observing this endless parade within our own minds and bodies, we become intimately familiar with the texture of change. We train ourselves, moment by moment, not to grasp, not to push away, but simply to observe with a steady, kind attention. The result of this practice is a profound shift in how we relate to the world. We become more flexible, more resilient. We are less like a rigid oak tree that snaps in a storm, and more like a slender reed that bends with the wind and stands up straight again when it has passed. When we truly understand that everything is temporary, we stop taking good times for granted. The knowledge that a beautiful moment will pass does not have to make it sad. It can make it infinitely more precious. You savor the conversation, the sunset, the taste of the food more completely, because you know it is a gift of this present moment, and this moment only. Paradoxically, accepting impermanence allows for a deeper and more authentic form of joy. And when difficult times come, as they inevitably will, we are better prepared. We still feel the pain, the sadness, the grief. Anicca is not a form of spiritual anesthetic, but the pain is not compounded by the second arrow of shock and resistance. We can allow the waves of sorrow to wash over us, knowing that they too, like all waves, will eventually recede. There is a deep and quiet strength in this acceptance, a freedom that comes from laying down the impossibly heavy burden of trying to make life stand still. We finally learn to dance with change, rather than being dragged, fighting and screaming in its wake. And as we watch this constant flux, this endless river of changing sights, sounds, sensations, and thoughts, a new question naturally begins to form. If everything is changing, every cell in my body, every belief I hold, every feeling in my heart, then who or what is the I that is witnessing it all? If all the components are in flux, where is the permanent self? This leads us directly to the next great pillar of Buddhist wisdom, the liberating insight of no self, of anatta. We arrive now at what is perhaps the most radical, the most counterintuitive, and ultimately the most liberating teaching in Buddhist philosophy. We left off with a question born from the contemplation of impermanence. If everything is in a constant state of flux, from the cells in our bodies to the thoughts in our minds, then who is this I that experiences it all? Our entire culture, our language, our psychology is built upon the bedrock assumption of a solid, continuous self. We are taught to find ourselves, to be true to ourselves, to build a strong identity. We think of the self as a core entity, a pilot in the cockpit of the body, a ghost in the machine. We believe there is a permanent, essential me that was born, that is living this life, and that will, in some form, endure. The teaching of anatta, or no self, invites us to challenge this fundamental assumption. It asks us not to believe a new doctrine, but to investigate our own experience with courageous honesty. It suggests that this solid, separate self we are so busy building and defending is, in fact, an illusion. This does not mean that you do not exist. You are clearly here, hearing these words, thinking these thoughts. The teaching of anatta is not nihilism. It is far more subtle and profound. It suggests that we exist, but not in the way we think we do. We are not a noun, but a verb. We are not a static entity, but a dynamic process. To make this clear, the Buddha analyzed the human experience into 5 categories, known as the 5 aggregates, or the 5 skandhas. He invited people to look for their self in any of these 5 areas. The first is form, our physical body. Is this body me? It is constantly changing. The cells you are made of today are not the same cells from 7 years ago. It gets sick, it ages, it will one day decay. It is a process, dependent on food, water, and air. If you investigate it, you cannot find a permanent owner of the body. The second is feeling, the raw sensations of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral that arise from contact with the world. Are you your feelings? They are fleeting, like bubbles on water, appearing and vanishing in moments. To build an identity on them is to build on the wind. The third is perception, the faculty that recognizes and labels. This is a tree that is a sad sound. Our perceptions are conditioned by our past, our culture, our mood. They are not an objective window onto reality. Are you these shifting labels? The fourth is mental formations, a broad category that includes all our thoughts, opinions, biases, habits, desires, and volitions. This is where we most often locate our sense of self. I am a person who believes this. I am a person who likes that. Yet, are our opinions not constantly changing? Are our moods not fickle? Are these conditioned mental habits the real, essential you? Finally, the fifth is consciousness, the raw awareness that arises when a sense organ meets an object. Eye consciousness arises when the eye meets a form. Ear consciousness arises when the ear meets a sound. It is not a monolithic grand theater of awareness, but a flickering, dependent, and intermittent process. When we search honestly through these 5 aspects that constitute our entire lived experience, we cannot find a single, permanent, independent controller, a core self that is in charge. What we find instead is a complex, interdependent, and ceaselessly flowing stream of processes. There is a classic story that wonderfully illustrates this. A learned Buddhist monk named Nagasena was approached by a Greek king, Melinda, who was a brilliant and skeptical debater. The king asked the monk his name. "I am known as Nagasena, Your Majesty," the monk replied. "But this is just a designation, a convenient name. In the ultimate sense, there is no permanent person to be found here." The king was intrigued and began to challenge him. "If there is no person, Nagasena, then who is it that wears these robes? Who eats, drinks, and sleeps? Who meditates?" The king then began a logical deconstruction. "Is your hair Nagasena? No, Your Majesty. Are your nails, your teeth, your skin, your bones Nagasena?" To each question, the monk replied, "No, Your Majesty." The king declared, "Then I cannot see who Nagasena is. Nagasena is just a sound." The monk, calm and smiling, then turned the question back to the king, who had arrived in a magnificent royal chariot. "Your Majesty, you came here in a chariot. May I ask, what is the chariot? Is the pole the chariot?" "No, venerable sir," said the king. "Is the axle the chariot? Are the wheels, the frame, the reins, the yoke, the chariot?" "No, venerable sir," the king replied to each question. Then, Nagasena continued, "Are all of these parts combined the chariot?" "No, venerable sir." "Then, is there something else, separate from all the parts? That is the chariot?" "No, venerable sir." At this, Nagasena declared, "Your Majesty, you have said that you arrived in a chariot, but when I ask you to explain it, you cannot find it. Is chariot then just a sound? In truth, chariot is just a convenient name, a designation given to this collection of parts, assembled in a particular way. In just the same way, Nagasena is a convenient designation for this collection of the 5 aggregates. In ultimate reality, there is no permanent self to be found. The reason this teaching is so central is because the mistaken belief in a separate, permanent self is the root cause of an immense amount of our suffering. Think of the energy we expend every single day protecting and enhancing this ego. Someone criticizes our opinion, and we feel a personal sting, a deep offense. Why? Because we have identified ourselves with that fleeting mental formation. We feel anxiety about our appearance because we have identified with this changing physical form. We compare ourselves to other selves, leading to the poisons of envy and pride. We walk through the world encased in a brittle shell of selfhood, constantly on guard, easily bruised, taking everything personally. This phantom self is a relentless taskmaster. It forces us to curate our lives, to build a personal brand, to constantly seek validation from others, to prove that we exist and that we matter. It is an exhausting and never-ending project. The liberation of anatta is the freedom that comes from beginning to lay this project down. It is the profound relief of realizing you don't have to defend a fortress that was never really there. When you are less identified with your thoughts and opinions, you can engage in discussions with curiosity rather than combativeness. When someone disagrees with you, it's just information, not an attack on your very being. When you are less identified with the story of me, I'm a failure, I'm unlovable, you open up to the possibility of infinite change and growth. You are not a fixed character in a play. You are the unfolding process of life itself. This insight does not lead to disconnection, but to the most authentic connection possible. When the hard walls of me and you begin to become more porous, we can see others not as competitors or threats to our ego, but as fellow flowing processes, just like us. We see their pain, their confusion, their joy, and recognize it as part of the same human stream. Genuine empathy and compassion arise naturally, not as a moral duty, but as a recognition of shared reality. There is a deep peace that comes from this. It is the peace of no longer needing to be right, of no longer needing to be special, of no longer needing to be anything other than what you are in this moment. A miraculous, temporary, and interconnected unfolding. This does not absolve us of responsibility. The process of you still performs actions, and those actions have consequences that the process will experience. But the motivation for action shifts from self-preservation to a genuine desire for the well-being of the whole. When the obsessive, anxious focus on the small, constructed self begins to soften, a vast and quiet space opens up in the heart. What rushes in to fill this space is not a void, but a profound sense of connection. It is a boundless, unconditional warmth for all of existence. And this warmth has a name. It is loving kindness, or metta. When the tight, clenched fist of the ego begins to relax, when the insight of no self, of anatta, shows us that the walls we built around our hearts are imaginary, a vast and quiet space opens up within us. This space is not empty. It is not a void. It is filled with the potential for a profound and authentic connection to all of life. The first quality that rushes in to fill this newfound openness is a gentle, unconditional warmth, a steady and sincere friendliness that is not dependent on whether we like or dislike, approve or disapprove. In the Buddhist tradition, this radiant heart quality is called metta, which is often translated as loving kindness. But perhaps a better translation for our modern ears is a boundless, friendly heart. It is not the possessive, romantic love we see in films, nor is it a bubbly, superficial happiness. It is a deep and quiet intention, the sincere wish for all beings, without exception, to be well, to be happy, and to be at peace. And most importantly, metta is not a feeling you must passively wait for. It is a skill you can actively cultivate, a fire you can intentionally build within your own heart to warm yourself and everyone you encounter. It is the practical application of our interconnectedness. In a world that often feels isolating, critical, and fraught with judgment, the practice of metta is a radical act of healing. It is the direct antidote to anger, resentment, jealousy, and fear. These corrosive states cannot coexist in the same moment as the genuine warmth of metta. The practice is a form of mental training, a rewiring of our habitual responses, away from contraction and toward expansion. It is a systematic softening of the heart, beginning with the most difficult person for many of us to love, ourselves. The meditation unfolds in stages, like the gentle ripples spreading from a pebble dropped in a still pond. You begin by finding a comfortable posture, closing your eyes, and bringing a sense of kindness to your own being. For many of us, raised in a culture of relentless self-improvement and self-criticism, this is the most difficult step. Our inner narrator is often harsh and unforgiving, so we start gently. We don't force a feeling. We simply plant the seeds of an intention. You can silently repeat a few simple phrases, directing them inward. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be free from inner and outer harm. May I be peaceful and at ease. You might feel resistance. The mind might say, I don't deserve this. Simply notice that thought, let it go, and kindly return to the phrases. You are not trying to convince yourself of anything. You are simply offering yourself the same basic courtesy you would offer a friend. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and the practice of metta must begin by allowing your own heart to be filled. Once a small feeling of warmth or peace begins to arise, you expand the circle. You bring to mind a benefactor or a dear friend, someone for whom you have easy, and uncomplicated feelings of love and appreciation. Picture them sitting in front of you, smiling, and now you direct the same warm wishes towards them. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live with ease. Feel the natural flow of your heart's goodwill towards this person. Let the feeling grow, bathing them in this radiant light of your intention. This stage helps the feeling of metta to flow strongly and freely, strengthening the muscle of the heart. Next, the practice challenges us to stretch a little further. You bring to mind a neutral person. This might be a cashier you see at the grocery store, a person you pass on your daily walk, someone in your office with whom you have no real connection. You don't like them. You don't dislike them. By directing the phrases of metta to this person, you are training your heart to overcome the habit of indifference. You are recognizing their humanity, their own quiet wish to be happy, just like you. Just as I wish to be well, may you be well. May you too find peace. This practice begins to break down the unconscious barriers we erect, transforming a world of strangers into a world of fellow beings. Then comes the most challenging and perhaps most transformative stage. You are invited to bring to mind a difficult person, someone who has hurt you, angered you, or caused you pain. It is vital to be wise here. You do not start with your greatest trauma. You start with someone who is only mildly irritating. The point is not to condone their harmful actions or to force a superficial forgiveness. The point is to liberate yourself. Resentment is a poison you drink, hoping the other person will suffer. Metta is the antidote you take for your own heart. Recognizing that this person is also a suffering being, trapped in their own confusion and pain, you tentatively offer them the wish for well-being. I know you have suffered, and in your suffering, you have caused me to suffer. I wish for you to be free from that suffering. May you find true peace. This act is one of profound self-compassion. It is you choosing to no longer carry the burning coal of hatred in your own hands. Finally, having moved through these stages, you let the circle of your heart expand without limits. You picture your family, your friends, your neighbors, the people in your town, your country. Then, you extend it further to all people on the planet. You extend it to the animals, the creatures in the sea, the birds in the air, every living being, big and small. You radiate this feeling of boundless, friendly warmth in all directions, front, back, left, right, up and down. May all beings everywhere, without exception, be happy. May all beings be free. May all beings find peace. You rest in this state of boundless, benevolent connection. There is a beautiful story that illustrates the protective power of this practice. A group of monks were sent by the Buddha to meditate in a deep, ancient forest. But as they sat among the old trees, they became filled with fear. They felt a hostile presence, as if the spirits of the forest were angry at their intrusion. Overwhelmed by terror, they abandoned their post and fled back to the Buddha. They explained the situation, expecting him to assign them a new, safer place to practice. Instead, the Buddha told them, "Monks, you went into that forest unarmed. I will give you the only weapon you need. Return to the same forest, and I will teach you the practice of metta." He taught them how to systematically radiate loving kindness. He told them to go back and, instead of cowering in fear, to actively fill the forest with thoughts of goodwill. The monks, trusting their teacher, returned to the very same spot that had terrified them. They sat down, and as instructed, they began to practice. They radiated metta to the trees, to the earth, to the unseen spirits, to every part of the forest. As they did, a remarkable transformation occurred. Their own fear dissolved, replaced by a warm and courageous heart. The entire atmosphere of the forest seemed to shift, from menacing to welcoming, from oppressive to serene. They were no longer intruders, but friends. Metta had not only protected them, it had transformed their entire world. This is not just an ancient story. The practice of loving kindness changes our perception, and in doing so, it changes our reality. It is a practice we can take off the cushion and into our lives. When you are stuck in traffic and feel anger rising at another driver, you can silently wish them well. When you read a frustrating comment online, you can take a breath and offer a moment of metta. This practice softens our edges, dissolves our judgments, and opens us up to the world with a brave and tender heart. This sincere wish for all beings to find happiness, this quality of metta, has a natural partner, a twin virtue that arises when we see that happiness is so often obstructed by pain. It is the heart's response to seeing suffering. It is the wish for all beings to be free from that suffering. This is the path of compassion, or karuna. If loving kindness, metta, is the radiant sun of the heart, then compassion, karuna, is the gentle rain that falls upon the dry and suffering parts of the world. It is the heart's natural and immediate response to the presence of pain. Where metta is the wish for all beings to be happy, karuna is the active wish for all beings to be free from suffering. It is the trembling of the heart in the face of another's sorrow, a trembling that is not born of fear or weakness, but of profound connection. It is the courage to not turn away, to not numb ourselves to the pain we see in others and in ourselves. In our modern world, we are bombarded with images of suffering from across the globe, and the natural human response can be to shut down, to feel overwhelmed, helpless, and to retreat into a shell of indifference. The path of karuna offers a different way. It provides the tools to keep the heart open and responsive, transforming helplessness into a source of deep strength and meaning. It is crucial to understand what compassion is not. It is not pity. Pity creates distance. It looks down from a position of superiority, saying, "Oh, you poor thing." Compassion stands alongside, on the same level, saying, "I am here with you in this. Your pain matters to me." Pity separates, compassion connects. Nor is compassion the same as empathic distress or emotional overwhelm. We all know the feeling of absorbing another person's anxiety or grief so completely that we become paralyzed by it. We become so bogged down in their emotional swamp that we are of no use to them or ourselves. This is not karuna. True compassion is like being a skilled and courageous lifeguard. The lifeguard sees someone drowning and feels the urgency, the adrenaline, the deep wish to help, but they do not jump into the water and drown alongside them. They remain on solid ground, clear-headed and strong, so they can effectively throw a lifeline. Karuna, then, is this potent combination, the quivering of a tender heart, plus the stability and wisdom to act effectively. It is feeling for someone, not necessarily feeling as them. Like all the great heart practices, karuna must begin at home, with ourselves. For most of us, our immediate reaction to our own suffering or failures, our insecurities, our moments of shame is one of harsh judgment and resistance. We try to push the pain away, or we berate ourselves for feeling it. Self-compassion is the radical act of turning towards our own pain with the same kindness and understanding we would offer a beloved friend. It is putting a gentle hand on our own aching heart and saying, "This is a moment of suffering. This is hard. It's okay." Without this foundation of inner kindness, any attempt to feel compassion for others will quickly lead to burnout. We cannot possibly hold the pain of the world if we are at war with ourselves. By learning to be a friend to our own sorrow, we build the deep inner resilience necessary to bear witness to the suffering of others without being destroyed by it. In the vast iconography of Buddhism, there is no more powerful symbol of compassion than the figure of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva who hears the cries of the world. The legend tells that Avalokiteshvara made a vow to work ceaselessly until all beings were liberated from their suffering. For ages, he labored tirelessly, but one day he looked out upon the world and saw that despite all his efforts, countless beings were still in pain, still lost in confusion. The sheer scale of the world's sorrow overwhelmed him, and in a moment of profound despair, his head shattered into 11 pieces, and his body into 1,000. He had reached his limit. But the story does not end there. The Buddhas, seeing his great compassionate intention and his unbearable sorrow, came to his aid. They reassembled him, transforming his brokenness into a source of greater power. They gave him 11 heads, so he could hear the cries of suffering from all directions at once. They gave him 1,000 arms, so he could reach out and offer help to 1,000 beings simultaneously. And in the palm of each hand, they placed an eye of wisdom, signifying that true compassionate action must always be guided by clear seeing. This story is a profound teaching. It tells us that it is okay for our hearts to break in the face of the world's pain. It shows that our personal, limited capacity for compassion, when offered up with sincere intention, can be transformed into something boundless and wise. Compassion is not about a personal hero succeeding against all odds. It is about our willingness to show up, to keep our hearts open, and to let ourselves be a conduit for a kindness that is larger than our small selves. To actively cultivate this quality, the Tibetan tradition offers a powerful and direct practice called Tonglen, which means giving and taking. It is a practice that directly reverses our habitual tendency to grasp at pleasure and push away pain. In Tonglen, you sit quietly and you begin by breathing in. On the in-breath, you intentionally take in the suffering of another person. You can visualize it as a dark, heavy, hot smoke. You breathe this difficult energy directly into your heart center. You do this with the intention of relieving the other person of their burden. When the dark smoke enters your heart, you trust in the heart's vast, open, alchemical nature to transform it. Then, on the out-breath, you give away whatever that person needs. You breathe out feelings of peace, strength, clarity, happiness, and well-being. You visualize this as a bright, cool, healing light, radiating from your heart and surrounding them, offering them complete relief. You can do this practice for a loved one who is sick, for yourself when you are in pain, for a stranger you see on the street, or for entire populations suffering from war or famine. Tonglen is a training in courage. It teaches the heart that it is more spacious and resilient than we believe. It dissolves the illusion of separation and allows us to feel actively engaged and helpful, even when we are physically powerless to change a situation. It is the ultimate expression of our shared humanity. This inner practice naturally fuels outer action. True compassion is not a passive state of feeling sad for others. It is the engine of wise action in the world. It is the antidote to cynical despair. When we feel overwhelmed by the news, instead of shutting down, we can do a few moments of Tonglen. This small inner shift breaks the spell of helplessness and can clarify our minds, allowing us to see if there is a skillful outer action we can take, no matter how small a kind word, a thoughtful donation, volunteering our time. The path of compassion requires us to care for ourselves, to avoid the burnout that comes from unwise empathy. It is not about carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders, but about training our heart to be a limitless source of strength and kindness. This brave work of compassion, of staying open to the world's pain, requires an immense inner stability. How do we hold both the boundless joy of metta and the deep sorrow of karuna without being torn apart? How do we care deeply, yet remain balanced and unshaken by the turbulent tides of life? This requires the fourth and final quality of the boundless heart. It is the quality of deep balance and profound peace, known as equanimity or upekkha. We have explored the radiant, sun-like warmth of loving kindness, metta, and the gentle, healing rain of compassion, karuna. But how does the heart hold both the brilliant light of joy and the deep shadows of sorrow without being torn apart? How do we care so deeply about the world, yet remain steady and unshaken by its constant, turbulent changes? To be both fully open and completely stable requires the cultivation of the fourth and final quality of the boundless heart. This is the great balancing force, the profound and quiet anchor of the soul, known as upekkha or equanimity. If metta and karuna are the beautiful sails of our ship, upekkha is the deep, heavy keel that keeps us upright and on course, no matter how fierce the storm. It is the practice of finding and abiding in a place of unshakable peace. It is absolutely essential to understand from the very beginning that equanimity is not indifference. This is the most common misunderstanding, and it is a critical one. Indifference is a cold state. It is a turning away, a form of aversion, a declaration that I don't care. It is a heart that has shut down. Equanimity, on the other hand, is a state of immense warmth and profound care. It is a heart that is so open, so vast, that it can hold the entirety of life's joys and sorrows without needing to grasp at one or push away the other. Indifference builds a wall. Equanimity reveals the boundless space that was already there. Imagine the vast open sky. It allows sunshine, gentle clouds, thunderstorms, and hurricanes to pass through it. The sky does not become the storm. It does not cling to the sunshine. It remains itself, vast, accommodating, and unchanged. Upekkha is the cultivation of this inner sky. At its core, equanimity is rooted in a deep wisdom, the understanding that every being in this universe is the owner and heir of their own actions, their own karma. This is not a fatalistic belief that things are meant to be. It is a practical recognition of the law of cause and effect. It is the understanding that while we can love, support, guide, and help others, we cannot walk their path for them. We cannot make their choices, nor can we shield them from the consequences of those choices. The practice of upekkha involves meditating on this truth, often with the traditional phrase, "All beings are the owners of their karma. Their happiness and suffering are born from their own past actions. I cannot decide their fate, no matter how much I may wish to." Repeating this is not an act of resignation, but an act of profound respect. It is letting go of the arrogant and exhausting burden of believing we are in charge of the universe. For a parent, it is the heart-wrenching, yet necessary, wisdom of letting a child go out into the world to make their own mistakes and learn their own lessons. For a friend, it is the ability to sit with someone in their pain without an anxious need to fix it, offering the simple, powerful gift of your calm presence. For a caregiver or an activist, it is the understanding that you can pour your entire heart into your work, But you cannot control the outcome. You do the good work because it is the right thing to do, and you release your attachment to the results. This is the secret to avoiding burnout. It is the key to sustainable love and sustainable action. The classic image for equanimity is that of a great mountain. Picture it standing in the center of the world. The winds of the four directions howl against it. The sun beats down upon it. The rains lash its slopes, and blizzards cover its peaks. Through it all, the mountain remains. It doesn't ignore the weather. It is fully present for it. The wind scours its rocks. The rain nourishes the life upon it. But its deep, essential nature remains stable, solid, and utterly unmoved. This is the mind of equanimity. The 8 worldly winds are always blowing in our lives. Pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disrepute. Our ordinary mind is constantly blown about by them, ecstatic one moment, despairing the next. The equanimous mind experiences all of these winds, but it is not knocked off its center. It has found an inner refuge, a stability that is not dependent on external conditions being pleasant. In our daily lives, this quality is a supreme protector. When someone praises you, you can receive it with gratitude, but it doesn't inflate your ego, because you know your worth is not dependent on their words. When someone criticizes you, you can listen for any truth in their critique, but it doesn't crush you, because you know their blame cannot touch your core. You become free from the emotional roller coaster of seeking approval and fearing disapproval. You can love someone with your whole being, but you do not cling to them with the desperation of needing them to make you happy. You can wish for a certain outcome, but you can meet a different outcome with grace and composure. This is not a state of being unfeeling. It is a state of feeling everything, but with a spaciousness that prevents you from being hijacked by your reactions. Upekkha is seen as the culmination of the 4 boundless heart states, the grounding force that perfects the other 3. It is the spacious container that holds loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy. Imagine a beautiful, ornate lamp. Metta is its warm, radiant light. Karuna is its power to dispel the darkness of a room. Sympathetic joy, which we will explore, is its ability to reflect and amplify other lights. But Upekkha is the heavy, stable base of the lamp itself. Without that solid base, the lamp would be easily knocked over, its light extinguished by the slightest bump. Equanimity is what allows our love and compassion to be fearless, because they are no longer subject to the whims of hope and fear. It is the profound peace that comes from embracing reality exactly as it is. It is the quiet confidence of a heart that has found its true home, a home that can never be threatened by the changing tides of the world. With this stable, balanced heart as our foundation, we are now fully equipped to turn towards some of the most powerful and challenging energies we face. We can approach the searing heat of anger, not with more fear or aggression, but with the cool, spacious clarity of a mind trained in wisdom and equanimity. We can finally learn to transform this fire rather than being burned by it. With the stable, balanced heart of equanimity as our foundation, we are now prepared to approach one of the most potent and challenging energies in the human experience, the searing fire of anger. In our society, we are given 2 primary options for dealing with anger. We are either taught to suppress it, to swallow it down, to pretend it isn't there, where it often festers into resentment or depression. Or we are encouraged to express it without restraint, to let it all out, which can cause immense harm to ourselves and others, perpetuating cycles of violence and pain. The Buddhist path offers a radical third way. It does not teach us to extinguish the fire, nor does it advise us to let it burn down the house. Instead, it teaches us how to become skillful alchemists, to transform the raw, powerful energy of anger into the warmth of wisdom and the light of compassionate action. The first, most crucial step in this transformation is to change our entire relationship with anger. We must stop seeing it as an enemy to be vanquished. Anger is not a sin, it is a messenger. Like a smoke alarm, its presence may be jarring and unpleasant, but its message is vital. It is signaling that a fire is burning somewhere. It is pointing to a place within us that feels threatened, a boundary that has been violated, a core value that has been trampled upon, or a deep hurt that has been touched. Our habit is to attack the messenger, to try and shut off the alarm. The practice of mindfulness invites us to do the opposite, to turn towards the alarm with a courageous curiosity and ask, what is the fire you are pointing to? What is the information you are trying to give me? When you feel the heat of anger beginning to rise, the first action is to practice the sacred pause. In the space between the trigger and your habitual reaction lies your freedom. Instead of immediately lashing out, you simply stop. You take a conscious breath. Then, you bring your awareness inside your own body. Where is the anger living physically? Is it a tightness in your jaw? A clenching in your fists? A burning sensation in your chest or stomach? A surge of heat rising to your face? Without judging these sensations, or even labeling them anger, you simply observe them as pure physical energy. There is heat, there is pressure, there is tightness. By shifting your attention from the story in your head to the raw sensations in your body, you begin to cut the fuel line to the narrative of blame and righteousness. You are no longer an angry person. You are an awareness that is experiencing temporary sensations of heat and pressure. From this grounded place, you can then observe the thoughts that accompany the anger. The mind will be screaming, "How dare they? This is unjust. I'll make them pay." Like clouds passing through the vast sky of your equanimous mind, you simply watch them. You don't have to board the train of every angry thought. You can stand on the platform and simply notice, there is a thought of revenge. There is a thought of blame. By not identifying with them, you rob them of their power to control you. Once the initial intensity of the storm has subsided even slightly, you can investigate more deeply. Anger is very often a secondary emotion, a powerful bodyguard, standing guard over something much more vulnerable. Gently, you can ask your heart, what is beneath this anger? If you listen with genuine curiosity, you will often find that under the hard, protective shell of anger lies the soft vulnerability of sadness or fear. Perhaps the anger at a partner's comment is shielding the deep sadness of feeling unheard, or the fear of being abandoned. The road rage at being cut off might be covering a fear of being disrespected or powerless. When you can identify and touch that underlying primary emotion, that soft spot, with the kindness of compassion, the karuna you have already cultivated, a remarkable thing happens. The anger often dissolves. Its job is done. It has delivered its message and led you to the part of yourself that truly needs healing. But what of the anger directed at us? How do we deal with the difficult people who throw their fire onto us? There is a timeless story that offers a masterclass in this situation. A man, hearing of the Buddha's teachings, became enraged and sought him out. He stood before the Buddha and unleashed a torrent of insults, calling him a charlatan, a fool, and a fraud. The Buddha listened with calm, patient silence until the man had exhausted himself and fallen quiet. Then, the Buddha spoke, his voice gentle. "My friend," he said, "if you purchase a gift for someone, and that person does not accept your gift, to whom does the gift belong?" The man, taken aback, replied, "Well, it would belong to me, of course." The Buddha smiled and said, "Exactly so. You have just offered me the gift of your anger and your insults. I do not accept them." This profound teaching empowers us completely. Another person's anger originates with them. It is their suffering, their fire. We are under no obligation to take it from them. We can let it remain their property. This does not mean we become a doormat. It means we do not let their inner state become our inner state. We maintain our own peace, our own upekkha, and from that stable ground, we can choose a wise and compassionate response, rather than an automatic, angry reaction. This response is guided by the principles of right speech. Instead of retaliating with blame, "You always do this. You made me so angry." We can speak our truth from our own experience. We use I statements. When those words were said, I felt a deep sense of hurt and anger arise within me. This communicates the impact of the action without attacking the person, creating the possibility for understanding rather than escalating the conflict. By engaging with anger in this way as a messenger, not an enemy, we become alchemists of our own emotional lives. We learn that this powerful energy does not need to be destructive. When held with mindfulness, investigated with curiosity, and met with compassion, the raw energy of anger can be transformed. The fire that once burned down the house can become the fire in the hearth that provides warmth and light. It can be transformed into the passionate energy needed to set clear boundaries. It can become the righteous fuel to fight against injustice. It can become the fierce, protective instinct that stands up for the vulnerable. By learning to skillfully transform our most difficult emotions, we clear the inner landscape of its most volatile storms. This creates a profound sense of peace and clarity. But the path is not only about dealing with the negative, it is also about actively cultivating the positive. Having navigated the territory of suffering and its causes, we can now turn our full attention to the nature of genuine happiness, a joy that is not dependent on fleeting pleasures, but arises from a heart that is truly free. Having learned to work skillfully with the fire of our most difficult emotions, we clear the inner landscape, creating a space of profound peace and clarity. Our journey so far has been largely one of navigating the territory of suffering, of understanding its nature, its causes, and the path to its cessation. But the spiritual path is not solely about release from the negative. It is also about the active and wholehearted cultivation of the positive. We can now turn our full attention to one of life's greatest and most misunderstood pursuits, the pursuit of happiness. We are taught from a young age to chase it, to acquire it through achievements, to purchase it with possessions, to find it in the arms of another. Yet this frantic chase so often leaves us feeling more exhausted than joyful. This is because we are often chasing a phantom. The Buddhist path offers a crucial distinction, a key that unlocks a more stable and authentic form of well-being, the distinction between fleeting pleasure and true unconditional joy. What we typically call happiness is conditional pleasure. It is dependent on getting something from the outside world. The thrill of a new car, the validation of a promotion, the taste of a delicious meal, the excitement of a new romance. These things are not bad. They are a beautiful part of the human experience. But their fundamental nature, as we know from the law of anicca, is that they are impermanent. They do not last. The car gets its first scratch. The promotion becomes the new stressful baseline. The meal ends. The initial thrill of the romance settles into a routine. And what does the mind do? It immediately begins seeking the next hit of pleasure. This is the hedonic treadmill. We are always running towards the next external thing that we believe will finally make us happy. And in this constant striving, we are never truly at rest. There is a low-grade anxiety that hums beneath even our most pleasant experiences. the quiet fear that it will end. But there is another kind of happiness, a joy that is not dependent on getting anything. It is a joy that arises from within, as a natural byproduct of a mind that is balanced, wholesome, and free. In the Buddhist teachings, 2 words for this are piti, a sense of zest or rapture, and sukha, a deeper, more abiding happiness or bliss. This is not a joy we have to chase. It is a joy that emerges when we get out of our own way. It arises from the joy of letting go, the profound lightness we feel when we release a long-held grudge or a stressful attachment. It arises from the joy of generosity, the warm glow that suffuses our heart after a genuine act of giving, with no thought of what we might get in return. It arises from the joy of a clear conscience, the deep and quiet peace that comes from living an ethical life, knowing that we are not causing harm to ourselves or others. And it arises from the joy of a quiet mind, the simple contentment that bubbles up when the frantic, chattering thoughts finally settle down through the practice of meditation. This is a happiness you cannot buy. It is a happiness that no one can take away from you, because its source is not in the world, but in the quality of your own heart and mind. Perhaps the most radical and beautiful form of this cultivated joy is what is known as mudita, or sympathetic joy. Mudita is the practice of feeling genuine, selfless delight in the happiness, success, and good fortune of others. This is one of the most powerful antidotes to the poison of envy and comparison, which is a source of so much quiet misery in our competitive culture. The default setting for the ego, when it sees someone else succeed, is to feel a pang of lack, to ask, "Why not me?" This is a state of profound suffering. Mudita invites us into a revolutionary shift in perspective. When you hear that a friend has received a wonderful opportunity, you train your mind to not compare, but to genuinely celebrate with them. You allow their joy to become your joy. The logic of this is transformative. The amount of happiness available in the world is not a limited pie, where someone else's big slice means less for you. Joy is not a zero-sum game. Through mudita, you recognize that joy is an abundant, renewable resource. By learning to rejoice in the happiness of others, you multiply your own opportunities for joy 1,000-fold. The success of your colleague, the beautiful wedding of a friend, the laughter of a stranger's child all become sources of nourishment for your own heart. It is the definitive cure for the loneliness of a self-centered existence. There is an old story that speaks to this truth, that happiness is an inner quality, not an external acquisition. A very poor man went to visit an old friend who had become immensely wealthy. The wealthy friend was compassionate, and, seeing the poor man's tattered clothes and tired spirit, he hosted him for a magnificent feast. After the meal, the poor man, exhausted from his travels, fell into a deep sleep. The wealthy friend was called away on urgent business and had to leave before his friend awoke. Not wanting to embarrass the poor man with an outright gift of charity, he took a flawless, priceless gem and carefully sewed it into the lining of his sleeping friend's coat. The poor man later awoke, unaware of his newfound fortune. He left the grand house and returned to his life of poverty, wandering from town to town, taking on hard labor for scraps of food, constantly living in a state of want and despair. Many years later, their paths crossed again. The wealthy friend was shocked to see his old friend still in such a miserable condition. "What happened?" he asked. "I don't understand. Why are you still living like this?" The poor man recounted his years of struggle and hardship. The wealthy friend listened and then said, "But how can this be? All those years ago, I gave you the means to be free from all this forever." He reached over, took the corner of the man's old worn-out coat, and tore open the seam. Out fell the brilliant, sparkling gem, catching the light. The poor man stared in utter disbelief. He had been carrying the source of his liberation with him the entire time, through all his suffering, and had never known to look within. We are all, in some way, this poor man. We search frantically in the external world for the gems of happiness, success, and validation, all the while unaware that the most priceless jewel of our own innate capacity for peace, contentment, and joy lies hidden within the lining of our own being. True, lasting joy is discovered not by adding anything to ourselves, but by uncovering what is already there. This is a practice for our daily life. It is about learning to find the quiet wonder in the ordinary moments. Through mindfulness, we can truly experience the simple taste of a sip of water, the warmth of the sun on our skin, the intricate pattern of a leaf. When we are fully present, without our minds straining for the next moment, the next achievement, the next pleasure, we discover that this moment, right here, is enough. It is filled with a simple, unassuming, and deeply nourishing joy. This is happiness without a cause. It is the quiet, profound bliss of simply being alive. When we stop the frantic external pursuit of happiness and begin to uncover this wellspring of joy within, our relationship to our daily life begins to change. We are no longer driven by a desperate need to get something from the world. This raises a new question. If not to chase happiness, what then is the purpose of our daily work, our chores, our routines? How do we infuse these ordinary activities with a sense of the sacred, transforming them from obligations into a living practice? When we begin to uncover the wellspring of unconditional joy that lies within, a profound shift occurs. We are no longer driven by the frantic, anxious pursuit of happiness from the external world. The desperate need to acquire, to achieve, and to be validated begins to lose its grip. This newfound freedom raises a beautiful and essential question. If the purpose of my life is not to constantly chase the next pleasant experience, then what is the purpose of my daily work, my chores, my routines? How do I navigate the landscape of my ordinary life? The answer offered by this path is transformative. It suggests that purpose is not a grand destination you must find in the future, but rather a quality of presence you can inhabit right now. The sacred is not confined to a meditation hall or a holy book. It is waiting to be discovered in the heart of the mundane. Your life, exactly as it is the curriculum. We live in a culture that encourages compartmentalization. There is work life, home life, social life, and, if we have time, a spiritual life. We imagine that our practice happens only on the meditation cushion, and the rest of our day is something to be rushed through or endured. This division is the source of a great deal of our dissatisfaction. The wisdom of this path invites us to dissolve these imaginary walls. It invites us to see our entire life as a seamless whole, as the monastery in which we practice. Your kitchen sink becomes a place of contemplation. Your office desk becomes your laboratory for studying the mind. The driver's seat of your car becomes your mobile meditation hall. The crying of your child or the demands of your boss are not interruptions to your practice. They are your practice. They are the bells of mindfulness, constantly calling you back from the dream world of your thoughts into the vibrant reality of the present moment. The method is stunningly simple, though not always easy. It is the practice of doing one thing at a time with your full attention. When you are washing the dishes, instead of mentally rehearsing an argument or planning your weekend, you simply wash the dishes. You feel the warmth of the water on your hands. You smell the scent of the soap. You see the light reflecting off a clean plate. you hear the sound of the water. In these moments, there is no room for anxiety or discontent because the mind is full. It is full of the simple, direct experience of reality. When you are driving to work, you can feel your hands on the steering wheel and your body in the seat. You can notice the tendency of the mind to drift into anger or impatience, and gently, you can guide it back to the act of driving. A red light is no longer a source of frustration. It is a bell, reminding you to take a conscious breath. At your desk, you can bring your full attention to writing an email, feeling the sensation of your fingers on the keyboard, observing the flow of thoughts without being swept away by distraction. This is the application of right effort and right mindfulness in the very midst of your daily grind. This transforms our understanding of right livelihood. The ideal, of course, is to have a profession that does not cause harm to any living being. But the deeper practice of right livelihood is less about what you do and more about how you do it. You can be a sanitation worker who performs your job with a focused mind and a kind heart, seeing your work as a genuine service to the health and well-being of your community. In doing so, you are practicing right livelihood more deeply than a celebrated leader of a non-profit who is driven by ego and treats their subordinates with disrespect. The question is not, how can I find a more meaningful job? But rather, how can I bring more meaning, integrity, and kindness to the job I have right now? There is a famous Zen story that captures this principle perfectly. A student, searching for profound truths, came to a revered old master. "Master," the student asked, "what is the great secret of your enlightenment? What miracles do you perform?" The master replied calmly, "My secret is this: when I am hungry, I eat. When I am tired, I sleep." The student was baffled and disappointed. "But master," he protested, "isn't that what everybody does?" The master looked at him with a gentle smile. "No," he said. "When most people eat, they are not really eating. They are thinking of 100 other things, worrying about the future, regretting the past. When they sleep, they are not truly sleeping. They are wrestling with their dreams and anxieties. But when I eat, I just eat. When I sleep, I just sleep." This is the secret. Enlightenment is not about escaping the ordinary. It is about inhabiting the ordinary with an extraordinary degree of wholeness and presence. It is the end of the divided mind. We can also infuse our days with purpose through the practice of dana, or generosity. This does not have to mean grand gestures or large sums of money. True generosity is a quality of the heart that can be expressed in countless small ways. You can be generous with your time, putting down your phone to offer your undivided attention to a child or a partner. You can be generous with your listening, creating a space for a colleague to share their troubles without interrupting to offer your own solutions. You can be generous with a kind word to a stressed cashier, with a smile to a stranger on the street, with your expertise to help someone solve a problem. Each of these small acts is a powerful practice, chipping away at the walls of the self-centered ego and reinforcing our sense of connection with the world around us. When we live this way, the search for a grand, abstract purpose begins to dissolve. We realize that the purpose of life is not to get to some glorious finish line. The purpose of life is life itself. The purpose is found in the quality of attention and care we bring to each step, each breath, each interaction. Your life, right now, with all its challenges, its routines, its beauty, and its boredom, is the perfect and complete ground for awakening. Every moment is a fresh invitation. This practice of finding the sacred in the ordinary provides us with a deep and stable foundation. It grounds us in the reality of the present moment. But life, in its vast and unpredictable nature, does not only present us with the ordinary, it also presents us with the devastating. How does this path of presence prepare us to meet life's most profound challenges, the heart-shattering experiences of grief, loss, and tragedy? How do we find the lotus of wisdom in the darkest mud of sorrow? The practice of finding the sacred in our daily lives provides a deep and steadying anchor, grounding us in the reality of the present moment. It prepares us for the ordinary rhythms of existence. But life, in its vast and unpredictable wisdom, does not only present us with the ordinary. Sooner or later, it brings each of us to our knees. It presents us with the devastating, the death of a person we cannot imagine living without, a life-altering diagnosis, a betrayal that shatters our trust, a tragedy that rips a hole in the fabric of our world. These are the moments that can feel like the end of everything. They are the crucibles that test our spiritual practice to its very core. And it is here, in the darkest mud of human sorrow, that the path offers not an escape, but a way through. It offers the promise that even here, a lotus of wisdom can grow. The first, most vital teaching for times of grief is this: you have permission to grieve. In a culture that often prizes strength and pressures us to move on, the Buddhist path invites us to do the opposite. It invites us to be radically kind to our own broken heart. A spiritual practice that denies or represses genuine human emotion is not a path of wisdom, it is a path of denial. The goal is not to stop feeling the pain, the goal is to change our relationship to it. This is where the practice of mindfulness becomes a lifeline. When a wave of grief washes over you, the tendency is to be completely consumed by it, to become one with it. I am sadness. I am despair. Mindfulness allows us to create a small pocket of awareness around the pain. Instead of being the wave, we become the ocean that holds the wave. We learn to say to ourselves, there is a deep ache in my chest. There are tears. A feeling of profound loss is present. We are not judging the feeling. We are not trying to fix it. We are not pushing it away. We are simply, bravely, bearing witness to it. We are holding our own sorrow with the same gentle, non-judgmental presence we would offer to a crying child. We are giving our pain the one thing it truly needs: our loving attention. In this space of mindful awareness, we can begin to work with the wisdom of impermanence, anicca, in a way that is no longer theoretical. We can revisit the story of Kisa Gotami, who went from house to house seeking a mustard seed from a family untouched by death. Her personal, isolating agony was transformed when she realized that loss is the universal condition of a world where everything is constantly changing. This does not make our own loss less painful, but it can soften the feeling that we have been singled out for a unique and terrible punishment. It connects our broken heart to all the broken hearts that have ever been and ever will be. It is also the antidote to the second arrow of suffering. And the story, our mind tells us that this should not have happened. The first arrow, the loss itself, is unavoidable. The pain is real. But the second arrow, the one we shoot into ourselves through our futile resistance to reality, is optional. Gently, slowly, over and over again, the contemplation of impermanence allows us to loosen our grip on that second arrow, to begin the painful but liberating process of accepting the unacceptable. When we feel completely lost in the dark forest of grief, the path offers us a place of refuge. It is known as the 3 jewels, and they are anchors in the storm. The first jewel is taking refuge in the Buddha. This does not mean praying to an external figure for salvation. It means taking refuge in the Buddha nature, within ourselves, our own innate, indestructible potential for wisdom, courage, and peace. It is trusting that even when our personality and our life are in shattered pieces, there is a core of calm awareness within us that is whole and unbroken. The second jewel is taking refuge in the Dharma. This is trusting in the truth of the teachings themselves. It is leaning on the laws of impermanence and interconnectedness as a map to navigate the darkness. It is reading the words of wisdom not as intellectual concepts, but as a direct lifeline from those who have walked this path before us. The third jewel is taking refuge in the Sangha. This is the community of fellow travelers on the path. It is the profound and irreplaceable healing that comes from sharing our sorrow with others who can hold it in a space of mindful, compassionate presence. It is the realization that we do not have to and cannot do this alone. The most powerful image for this entire process is that of the lotus flower. The lotus has its roots in the deepest, darkest, thickest mud at the bottom of the pond. It is from this decay, this darkness, this foul-smelling muck, that the lotus draws the very nourishment it needs to grow. Its stem pushes patiently upward through the murky and unclear water, always reaching for the light it cannot yet see. And then, finally, it breaks through the surface and blossoms into a flower of breathtaking, pristine beauty, its petals unstained by the mud from which it was born. This is the promise of the path. The mud is the unavoidable suffering of our life, the grief, the loss, the despair. The practice, held within the refuge of the three jewels, is the stem, guiding us upward through the confusion. And the blossom is the wisdom and compassion that can emerge directly from our suffering, not just in spite of it. Our pain, when met with courage and kindness, can become the very soil in which a deeper, more resilient heart can grow. This is how our greatest pain becomes a catalyst for our deepest compassion. When we have navigated the territory of profound loss, we are changed forever. We develop a new capacity to understand the suffering of others. Our personal grief becomes a bridge to a universal empathy. When we see another person drowning in sorrow, we no longer offer them shallow platitudes from the shore. We know something of that dark water. We can offer them a presence that is authentic and fearless, a kindness that is born not of theory, but of shared experience. Our heart, having been broken, breaks open. It becomes more spacious, more tender, more capable of holding the full spectrum of life. The path does not promise a life without scars. It does not promise that the ache of loss will ever vanish completely. What it offers is a way to carry our scars with grace, to see them not as signs of damage, but as testaments to our resilience and our capacity to love. The grief becomes integrated, woven into the rich and complex tapestry of our life, becoming a source of depth, wisdom, and profound humanity. When our own hearts have been broken open by sorrow, the illusion that we are separate, isolated beings begins to crumble. We see our own pain reflected in the eyes of others, and their pain resonates within us. This deeply personal experience of suffering paradoxically reveals a universal truth, that we are all inextricably linked. This leads us to explore one of the most profound and far-reaching teachings of the Buddhist intricate, shimmering web of life, known as interconnectedness. When our own hearts have been broken open by the universal experience of sorrow, the deeply ingrained illusion that we are separate, isolated beings begins to crumble. We see our own pain reflected in the eyes of others, and their pain resonates within our own nervous system. This profoundly personal journey, paradoxically, reveals a universal truth, that nothing exists in isolation. This realization is the gateway to one of the most sublime and foundational teachings of the Buddha, a vision of reality that replaces the cold mechanics of a world of separate objects with a warm, vibrant, and living web of profound connection. This teaching is known as dependent origination, or perhaps more poetically, as interconnectedness. The principle can be stated with elegant simplicity. This is, because that is. This is not, because that is not. When this arises, that arises. When this ceases, that ceases. Nothing comes into being by itself. Everything arises in dependence upon other conditions. The idea of a separate, independent thing is a mental fiction, a useful label, but not an ultimate reality. To make this clear, consider the simple piece of paper in front of you. Where is it from? We might say it is from a tree, but the tree cannot exist without the soil, the rain, the sunlight, and the air. The soil cannot exist without the microorganisms and decaying matter of eons past. The logger who cut the tree needed parents to be born, food to eat, and a language to learn. The people in the paper mill, the truck driver who delivered the paper, the engineer who designed the machinery, they are all present in this single sheet. If you look deeply enough into this piece of paper, you see the clouds, the sun, the forest, the farmer, the baker, the miner. You see the entire cosmos converging in this one simple object. The paper is not a separate thing. It is with everything else in the universe. There is a magnificent image from Buddhist cosmology that captures this vision with breathtaking beauty. It is the image of Indra's net. Imagine a vast cosmic net that stretches out to infinity in all directions. At every single knot, at every point where the threads of the net cross, there hangs a single, multifaceted, perfectly polished jewel. The miracle of this net is that if you were to look closely at the surface of any one of these jewels, you would see reflected in it every other jewel in the entire infinite net. And not only that, but the reflection of each jewel also contains the reflection of all the other jewels, creating an endless, recursive cascade of interreflection. Each jewel is defined by all the others. Its very existence is the totality of the net. We are each a jewel in this net. Our sense of being a separate, isolated gem is an illusion, a trick of perspective caused by looking only at ourselves without noticing the infinite web of reflections that give us our form and substance. Every action we take, every word we speak, every thought we think sends a vibration, a shimmer throughout the entire net. Nothing we do is in isolation. Our joy, our sorrow, our anger, our kindness, it all ripples out, touching every other jewel in ways seen and unseen. When this is no longer just an intellectual idea, but a deeply felt reality, it revolutionizes our relationship to the world. It becomes the foundation for a profound and natural ethics. Consider our relationship with the planet. If we truly see that the river is our bloodstream, the air is our breath, and the forests are our lungs, then polluting the environment is no longer an abstract problem out there. It is a direct and intimate act of self-harm. Ecological responsibility ceases to be a political choice and becomes a fundamental spiritual practice, an act of sanity and self-preservation for the entire web. The same is true for our social world. The myth of the self-made person, so cherished in our individualistic culture, dissolves in the light of interconnectedness. Our success is built upon the labor of countless others. Our education is a gift from generations of thinkers and teachers. Our very survival depends on the farmers, the doctors, the engineers, the artists, the intricate functioning of the whole of society. This understanding dismantles the us versus them mentality that is the source of so much conflict. When we see that the person on the other side of the border, the person who holds different beliefs, the person with a different skin color, is another jewel in the very same net, their well-being becomes inseparable from our own. Harming them is, in the most literal sense, harming ourselves. Compassion, karuna, is no longer something we have to strive for. It is the logical, natural response of seeing reality clearly. This vision of interconnectedness illuminates all the teachings we have explored. The reason there is no permanent, separate self, anatta, is because we are nothing but a temporary pattern, a convergence of threads in this great web. The self is not a thing, but a location where the universe is happening. The law of karma is the law of cause and effect operating within the net. An action at one point has consequences that reverberate throughout the system. This understanding does not diminish our individuality, it enriches it. It frees us from the terrible, anxious burden of the isolated ego, the exhausting project of having to protect and defend a small, separate self against the rest of the universe. We can finally relax, trusting that we are held and supported by the vast web of life. We are not a lonely wave. We are the entire ocean, expressing itself for a time as a wave. This is more than a philosophy. It can be a lived, felt experience. The practice is to actively look for the connections in your daily life. As you eat your meal, see the sun, the soil, and the farmer who grew the food. As you put on your clothes, see the cotton fields, the factory worker, and the designer. As you sit in your home, see the forest in the wooden beams, and the quarry in the stone foundation. This practice transforms a world of separate dead objects into a world that is vibrant, alive, and shimmering with miraculous relationship. Seeing our lives as inextricably woven into this vast, miraculous web changes everything. The frantic striving of the separate self gives way to a sense of participation in a grand, unfolding process. This leads us to our final contemplation. What does it mean to live a truly liberated life? If there is no final destination to reach, no ultimate prize to be won outside of the process itself, then how do we walk this path day by day? We discover that the path itself, walked with awareness and an open heart, is the very liberation we were seeking. We have journeyed through the deepest truths of the human condition, from the reality of our shared disquiet to the shimmering, interconnected web of all existence. Seeing our lives as inextricably woven into this vast, miraculous net changes everything. The frantic striving of the separate self gives way to a sense of participation in a grand, unfolding process. This leads us to our final contemplation, the culmination of our entire journey. What does it mean to live a truly liberated life? In a culture obsessed with goals, achievements, and finish lines, the most profound teaching may be the most simple. Liberation is not a destination to be reached. The path itself, walked with awareness and an open heart, is the very freedom we have been seeking. Enlightenment, or liberation, has often been imagined as a dramatic, thunderclap event, a final graduation from the school of life, where all problems cease to exist. This is a fantasy. The wisdom of this path teaches that liberation is not about becoming a superhuman, floating above the messy reality of life. It is about becoming fully, completely, and courageously human. A liberated person still gets sick. They still experience loss. They still encounter difficult people. The world does not stop being the world. What changes, profoundly, and irrevocably is one's relationship to it all. The friction is gone. The resistance has ceased. There is no longer a war being fought between the way things are and the way the ego wishes them to be. Peace, we discover, is not the absence of problems. It is the presence of a mind so spacious, so stable, and so kind that it can hold all of life's problems without being capsized by them. Let us return to the image from the very beginning of our journey. The person stuck in a traffic jam, trapped in their car, a prisoner of circumstance. The horns blare, the exhaust fumes rise, the minutes tick by. Their inner world is a storm of frustration, anxiety, and powerless rage. Their heart rate is elevated, their jaw is tight, their mind is racing with stories of blame and injustice. Now, imagine the same person in the exact same traffic jam. After having walked this path, the external situation has not changed one bit. The cars are still not moving. The noise is still present. But the inner universe is entirely different. This person feels their body resting in the seat. They are aware of the simple, steady rhythm of their own breath. A thought of impatience arises. This is taking forever, and it is noticed, acknowledged, with a gentle, mental nod, and allowed to pass, without being fueled. A feeling of frustration begins to bubble up in the chest, and it is met with the warmth of compassionate attention, not with resistance. Looking out the window, this person sees not a collection of obstacles, but a series of other human beings, each with their own destination, their own worries, their own life. They are all jewels in Indra's net, temporarily caught in the same pattern. In the midst of the noise and the delay, there is a core of stillness, a profound sense of acceptance. There is freedom. Liberation is not about the traffic jam magically disappearing. It is about finding peace right in the middle of it. There is a simple story of two hikers that illustrates this. Both set out to climb a beautiful mountain. The first hiker is obsessed with the goal of reaching the summit. His head is down. His focus is fixed on the end point. He pushes his body relentlessly, seeing the path only as an obstacle to be overcome. He curses the steep sections and fumes with impatience when he needs to rest. The birdsong, the wildflowers, the breathtaking views along the way all are missed, ignored in the single-minded pursuit of the goal. He finally reaches the summit, exhausted and depleted, snaps a picture to prove he was there, and immediately feels a sense of anticlimax, his mind already anxious about the long, arduous journey down. The second hiker also intends to reach the summit, but she understands that the journey is the destination. With every step, she feels the earth beneath her feet. She notices the way the light filters through the trees. She listens to the sound of the wind. She feels the pleasant burn in her muscles and savors the taste of the cool water when she stops to rest. For her, the entire experience is one of discovery and joy. The summit is not a prize to be won at the end of a struggle. It is simply one beautiful moment in a day filled with beautiful moments. Her life is not postponed until the goal is reached. Her life is happening with every single step. This is the choice we have in how we live. We can live like the first hiker, always postponing our happiness, our peace, our life, until we achieve the next goal. Or we can live like the second, discovering that the very act of living, when done with mindful, open-hearted attention, is the whole point. This is not a path you can complete. You do not get a certificate of enlightenment. It is a continuous, moment-to-moment cultivation. There will be days of pristine clarity, and there will be days the mind is a muddy, confusing mess. There will be moments of boundless compassion, and there will be moments of petty irritation. The practice is not to achieve a permanent state of perfection. The practice is to learn how to be perfectly present with our beautiful, messy, and ever-changing imperfection. And so, our long exploration has brought us back to precisely where we began, this present moment. But we do not arrive here empty-handed. We arrive with a new understanding and a full set of tools, the wisdom to see things as they are, the compassion to hold ourselves and the world with kindness, and the mindfulness to be present for it all. The great journey outwards into the landscape of Buddhist philosophy has become the great journey inwards into the landscape of our own heart. And the final, liberating truth is this: the path is not something you need to find. You are already on it. Your life, right now, is the path. Your very next breath is a step. The only question left is, how will you walk? We have traveled a great distance together on this inner journey. We began with a feeling so common in our modern world, the quiet and persistent sense of disquiet, the feeling of being caught on a treadmill, running faster and faster, but arriving nowhere. We gave this feeling a name, dukkha, recognizing it not as a personal failure, but as a fundamental truth of the human condition. From there, we looked deeply and found its cause, not in the world around us, but in the habits of our own minds, in our relentless clinging to pleasure and our fierce aversion to pain. But we did not stop there. In a place of diagnosis, we discovered that there is a path, a practical, compassionate, and time-tested guide for walking out of this self-created suffering. We explored the Eightfold Way as a complete design for a life of wisdom, ethical integrity, and mental cultivation. We learned to watch our minds, to work with our most difficult emotions, to open our hearts with kindness and compassion, and to see ourselves not as isolated islands, but as interconnected jewels in the vast, shimmering net of life. This entire journey has been a fundamental shift in direction, a turning away from the frantic search for solutions outside of ourselves, and a turning toward the vast, untapped reservoir of peace, clarity, and strength that lies within. If there is one single truth to carry forth from our time together, let it be this: peace is not a distant place where there is no noise, no trouble, and no heartbreak. Peace is the ability to be in the very midst of those things and still maintain a profound sense of balance and stillness in your own heart. This path does not offer an escape from the realities of human existence. It offers something far more powerful: the tools to meet every aspect of your life, the beautiful, the painful, the mundane, the tragic, with a grace, a courage, and a compassionate wisdom that is your own true nature. You do not need to call yourself a Buddhist. You do not need to adopt any new beliefs or rituals. These teachings are not a religion in that sense. They are a science of the mind, a set of universal tools for any human being who wishes to live with less suffering and more freedom. Do not feel overwhelmed, as if you must master everything at once. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Perhaps your practice can begin tomorrow morning, simply by taking 3 conscious breaths before you get out of your bed. Perhaps it can begin by truly tasting your morning coffee, or by offering a silent wish of well-being to the first person you see. The path is not found in a grand gesture, but in the quiet quality of attention you bring to the smallest moments of your day. You do not need to go searching for peace. You need only to cultivate it, right here, right now, in the fertile soil of your own life. Your liberation is not in some distant future. It is in your very next breath.